The story of Yan, son of Jin from Largenia, began with an unexpected encounter. At 12 years old, he accidentally came across a large, fearsome dragon. But there was not a trace of fear on Jin's face. He was only amazed that such an impressive creature could be encountered so close, and even glad that he was lucky enough to find it. When the terrible dragon lunged forward and showed its sharp teeth, Jin did not hesitate. He immediately used his magical ability, Divine Protection, and quickly dodged the blow, instantly created a magic circle, and unleashed a powerful wind attack, cutting through the huge dragon while it was falling heavily to the ground. Describe what magical abilities this character has and what he can do with his magic. He was confident that he would easily handle the upcoming conversation with his father. The next day inside the great house of Largenia, Father Jin stood before him with a serious expression on his face. He asked who, according to Jin, helped him finally celebrate his 12th birthday. Jin didn't even think and immediately answered that it was all thanks to his dad. But their conversation was suddenly interrupted by other children who began laughing and calling Jin cheeky because he called this man father. The children mocked him, saying he was from a simple family and no different from a petty thief, just like his mother. One guy approached Jin and maliciously whispered that he was just a dirty child of the woman who seduced their father and got pregnant, and also called him illegitimate and threw in 30 more offensive words. Listening to these insults, Jin barely restrained his anger and clenched his teeth. At that moment, his father said that he had summoned Jin not without reason. Then he also accused Jin of having sold not only Alfonso's precious spellbook, but also the family sword. He added that Alfonso himself had told him how he saw Jin snooping around the antique shop. When Jin heard such serious accusations, he desperately began to assure his father that he had done nothing wrong. The other children nearby only smiled and said they had always suspected Jin really was the son of a thief. Angered, Jin shouted at them that he was not a thief and forbade them to insult his mother. But his father paid no attention to his son's pleas and said he was very disappointed in him. After that, he calmly told Jin that, showing mercy, he was giving him a choice between two paths. One person was to become Alfonso's constant playmate and never again interfere in the family's affairs. And the second option was to leave the Largenia household forever. The boy next to Jin snorted contemptuously and said that Jin was an easy target. He would easily defeat him using magic. Jin's father only smiled ominously and declared that without the Largenia name, his son would achieve nothing. At first, Jin declared with a serious look that he would not leave home, but everything changed in an instant when his father said that he himself would become Alfonso's feather. Hearing this, Jin instantly changed his mind. The boy with a stern look interrupted the conversation, outraged at how Jin could even say such things in front of their father. But Jin calmly asked why he was reacting so sharply. Irritated by this response, the boy immediately used his magic and threw it at Jin, shouting that Jin must be silent and become his test subject. When the attack hit, the boy giggled, confident that his spell had worked. But his confidence quickly vanished when he saw that Jin easily dodged the blow, and a large hole remained in the wall. Suddenly, a pillar above them collapsed from the impact, and the entire ceiling began to fall apart. Everyone watched this with mouths open in surprise. Jin calmly remarked that this was exactly what he expected from Alphonse. Destroying a house with magic was no problem for him. Without saying anything more, he said goodbye to everyone and thanked them for everything they had done for him. Next, the events shift to the past, on Jin's 12th birthday. On the day his life suddenly ended due to a serious car accident, he unexpectedly reincarnated as Jinwon Largenia. As Jin gradually thought it over, it seemed to him that this name was familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before. But before he could understand anything, a person suddenly appeared from behind and poured water on his head. She got angry that he was disturbing her cleaning and sharply told him to step aside. He got scared, immediately apologized, and quickly left. Then he quickly ran to the mirror and saw his reflection there. Finally, he realized that he had been reborn as a character from the game he had played in his past life. This game was known under the title Hero of the Sacred Sword and the Seven Battle Maidens, but that was not the only thing that made it special. In it, the hero, together with the seven maidens, fought against the Demon Lord, and although the game was a dating simulator, the characters were very well thought out, even the villains were memorable. In the game, everyone knew Jinwon Largenia as the worst of the worst, and this was not without reason. It all started when he turned 15. His fiancée Flora, one of the seven girls, harshly rejected him, and also, without any reason, he was defeated by the main hero. Losing Flora and losing to the hero, Jin was also expelled from his own family. His constant clashes with the hero, who was much stronger than him, pushed him onto the path of evil. Later, he caused even more harm than the demon lord himself. He spared neither women nor children and took genuine pleasure in committing cruelty against innocent people. In the end, Jin became known in the gaming world as the worst character in the game. Realizing his fate, Jin panicked. He hurriedly began to think about how old he was now. He wondered if he could see his status just like in a game. Quietly and calmly, he commanded his status to appear. And immediately before him appeared a large screen with a status. Without wasting time, he quickly reviewed the information and saw that he was now 12 years old. He felt genuine relief that he managed to avoid his inevitable trouble even before it began. Reviewing his status panel, he pondered. Even now, he remained the strongest cheating character in the game. Just as he expected, now Jin was completely sure that this was truly the world of the hero of the sacred sword and the 7 battle maidens. The most important thing he understood was that after his 12th birthday, something big had to happen. Therefore, he needed to properly test his magical abilities before drawing any conclusions. Turning to the present moment, Jin handed the sealed letter to the maid and asked her to deliver it to his fiancée. Then he stood before his mother's portrait and said sadly that he no longer wanted to have anything to do with this family. Although everyone thought his mother died of illness, Jin was sure she was poisoned. The loss of his only ally, his mother, was a heavy blow for Jin from the game, but already in his new life he understood there was no point in being sad. Also in the original game plot, Jin did not leave the mansion but stayed there, and after 3 years, at the age of 15, his family would have officially kicked him out. This would have been the beginning of his dark path. But having left home right now, Jin had already chosen a completely different path and would definitely not end up in that terrible future. Having experience from a past life, he was confident that he could handle everything that awaited ahead. When Jin approached the mansion gates, the guard on duty asked if he was lost and explained that beyond these strong walls begins a completely different district. Jin immediately smiled confidently and assured the guard that everything would be fine with him, but the guard warned him about the opposite district, calling it a place where different people mixed, and this could be either for better or for worse. But Jin hardly paid attention to the warning and eagerly went out the gate. He only thought about how he had already decided to avoid his grim fate at all costs and escape a bad end. Jin was walking briskly down the street and watching the passers-by. He noticed how real and alive these people seemed compared to the game he once played. Rejecting all reflections, he decided that if he wanted to earn money, going the adventurer's way was the best option. The profession of an adventurer was a true symbol of freedom. Here your status depended only on your own skill, and money and fame directly followed ability. After he was expelled from the House of Largenius, this occupation became his only real chance. He knew that the Adventure Guild was a very important place in the game where you could earn money and meet new characters. As soon as Jin entered the inside of the guild building, he accidentally bumped into the werewolf woman, not even noticing that he had been staring at her for a long time. A woman named Elsa leaned in and coquettishly said that it was hard for her not to get flustered when he looked at her like that. Also, looking at his clothes, Elsa noted that he was probably from an aristocratic family. She came closer and offered him a night adventure for 10 gold coins, but then another man sternly said from behind, "Don't touch Jin." Jin quickly took Elsa aside and told her that he was not yet registered as an adventurer, but Elsa did not stop and continued joking, suggesting Jin quickly go through his first adventure. While Jin was pondering whether such events were even possible in the game, another woman named Fine interrupted the conversation and asked Elsa not to bother him. "All right, fine," she apologized to Jen and introduced herself as the guild administrator, then asked if Jen was ready to go through the registration for newcomers. Seeing her, Jin was momentarily confused, but quickly composed himself and admitted that he was already ready to register. Jin thought that although in the game the Jilly characters seemed ordinary, now that he saw them with his own eyes, they all turned out to be surprisingly attractive. At that very moment, you find the registration form and even ask if he knows how to fill it out. While Jin carefully filled out the questionnaire, he thought that Fine was actually very kind, just like in the game. When he finished, he quickly reviewed everything once more and asked if Jin was ready to take the order right now. Jin looked confused, as he currently had neither equipment nor weapons. Fine only added fuel to the fire, noting that some adventurers underestimate the importance of equipment and often die because of it. Fine even offered to introduce him to the blacksmith, and Jin felt calm, for he knew that from now on Fine would always watch over the adventurer's safety. To her generous offer, Jin politely declined and said that he already knows where to go next for equipment. He is looking out for his own benefit and he presented his guild card and officially completed the registration. Jin happily noted that everything went even easier than he expected. Without thinking long, the guild members barely greeted Jin and sincerely invited him into the ever-changing world of adventures. Soon after that, when Jin left the guild, he was still amazed at how vivid and interesting the secondary characters were, although in the game he hardly paid attention to them. Now he looked at them in a new way, and it pleasantly surprised him. The real Jin and the story itself decided to become an adventure. Perhaps he had a chance not to fall into darkness. But the current Jin understood that he could not relax, because you never know when you might stumble again and return to this dangerous path. To avoid going down the dangerous path, Jin decided to first prepare and use knowledge from his past life to find the most useful things. Jin stood in front of an old abandoned house, which looked ordinary from the outside and had no signs. But this place suddenly appeared at a key moment in the game. Here is a secret shop known only to the chosen. As soon as he entered the dusty room, a suspicious and sinister old woman immediately looked at him with a gloomy gaze. It seemed that the strange behavior of the girl did not embarrass Jin at all. He calmly greeted her. The old woman looked very surprised by his courage and noted that he was only the second person she had met who was not afraid of her. But she could not understand why Jin was laughing while looking at her face. Meanwhile, Jin calmly looked around, amazed at how many interesting things were hidden here. When the lady asked why he was behaving like that, Jin, in response, inquired how much longer she intended to pretend to be a suspicious old lady. The old lady was very surprised by Jin's words and, stammering, asked what he meant. She added that from all sides she looked like a real grandmother, but Jin confidently said that he saw her true essence and knew how old she really was. Unable to withstand his penetrating gaze, the old lady suddenly transformed into an impressive woman with elegant elven ears and long, beautiful hair. Confused, she asked how he managed to figure it out and noted that, by elven standards, she was still very young. And definitely not some old lady. When Jen asked her about this, she admitted that she thought the image of an old lady was perfect for such a suspicious shop as hers. Moreover, she was upset because almost no one paid attention to her store, and of the rare visitors almost all were adults. However, putting aside her activity, she extended her hand and asked what Jin's name was. She introduced herself as Cynthia. Jin also gave his name and gladly shook her hand. Cynthia looked over his clothes and said that he looked like a noble or well-mannered young gentleman, then asked if he had come here to buy weapons. In response, Jennifer added that he had almost no money with him. Cynthia informed him that her shop was for true connoisseurs of quality things. When Jin showed his 2 gold coins and said that was all his money, the woman simply replied that for such an amount he would not be able to buy anything. With hope, Jin explained that he had only left home yesterday and was just beginning to prepare for a new life. Thanking her for the help, Cynthia thought for a moment and immediately said she promised to consider his request if he helped her with one small matter. Without hesitating for a second, Jin agreed, and Cynthia immediately threw him a silver coin. He asked if he could buy flowers that would suit her shop well. Soon Jin went to the noisy market in search of the needed flowers and was surprised, as he did not remember such a task in any game quest. At the other end of the market, a little rabbit girl was walking down the street selling her flowers when suddenly she accidentally bumped into a man and fell to the ground. The man angrily scolded the girl to watch where she was going. Then he showed her a new scratch on his equipment and said that she had made it. After that, he demanded 10 gold coins from the poor girl, then suspiciously smiled and offered to help her find a job so she could pay him back. At that moment, Jin suddenly appeared and stood between the rude man and the frightened girl. He immediately asked the man if he really intended to demand 10 gold coins for such a miserable item. The man, with a threatening look, sharply turned to Jin and asked where he wanted to die, but Jin was not scared at all and thought that boasting about such basic equipment meant showing weakness. Jin did not even hesitate. His sharp reply instantly echoed in the air. The bully's face twisted. He instantly drew his sword and warned that Jin would deeply regret interfering. When the man swung his sword, Jin deftly dodged the blow. He even mocked how clumsily the man attacked, which only further enraged him. And he raised his sword again to strike. Jin easily dodged the attack, and this time immediately countered with his own move. He lightly struck the man in the chest, and the man immediately stepped back with a muffled groan. But Jin did not stop there. He delivered another strong blow, and the man fell to the ground. Standing before the defeated bully, Jin calmly said that good equipment is very important in a fight. Meanwhile, the other people around burst into applause, admiring Jin's unexpected bravery. At that moment, Jin turned to the poor bunny girl, picked up her flowers, and asked how much they cost. The the girl hesitantly replied that one flower was worth 3 copper coins. In response, he said he would take all the flowers for a silver coin. The girl opened her eyes in surprise and reluctantly said that was too expensive for ordinary flowers. But Jin smiled warmly and told her not to worry. Soon Jin returned to the hidden shop and told Cynthia that he had gotten the flowers as she had asked. He asked if he really brought the flowers suitable for her store. To this, he replied that it was up to her to decide if they suited her. In an instant, Jen opened his inventory and summoned flowers. Cynthia was surprised, quickly washed up, and immediately asked about the heat. She really had unique abilities for this storage skill. Seeing her surprise, he calmly asked if it was really that rare to have such a skill. She told him that every merchant dreams of having such a skill. After that, Cynthia sighed with relief. Her face lit up with a genuine smile when she told him that he had passed her subtle test. It turned out she just wanted to make sure she could trust him. Learning this, Jen was delighted, as he was finally getting the much-needed equipment. Cynthia immediately asked Jen to wait while she chose for him what she thought would suit best. Meanwhile, Jin thought that in the game, opening a shop was only possible somewhere in the middle of the playthrough, so it was quite logical that he placed great hopes on the equipment. But he did not forget that now everything was happening differently than originally planned in the game's plot. Therefore, he needed to stay attentive and not lose vigilance. While Jin was lost in his thoughts, Cynthia returned and quickly put an amazing set of armor on him. She explained that this armor was made from lizard leather, which is officially classified as dragon lineage material. Unexpectedly and without any warning, she calmly struck the armor with a wooden bat. This shows how strong it is, as even after the blow it remained intact and undamaged. Moreover, she also handed him an impressive sword and dagger, and with a joking tone asked if he was planning to fight the monster with his bare hands. But Jin asked if it was really okay for her to give him such cool equipment, since he had a limited budget. But she calmly assured him that everything was fine, and added that she was good at noticing potential regular customers. She smiled to reassure the interlocutor, and added that she had a good intuition about people. And Jin apologized, explaining that he really couldn't afford such quality equipment, but also admitted that he had no reason to refuse her generous offer. Moreover, he promised that he would definitely repay this help someday. But Cynthia simply took 1 gold coin from his hand and said that it was quite enough for her, leaving him surprised. She also noted that she was just glad that the goods that had been lying in the warehouse for a long time finally started selling. Jin sincerely thanked her. Cynthia asked how he felt after putting on this cool equipment, and added that very soon he would get used to using big weapons. After that, she offered him to look at a few more items, assuring that she could make a good discount. Jen asked again if she was really comfortable providing so many services already after their first meeting. She reassured him, saying that it was her store, and admitted that she felt investing in it would be a very right decision. Jin also recalled that such rare cases of help happened back when he was playing the game, and he had almost achieved something really important on his own. But he dismissed these thoughts and decided to try, because Cynthia insisted so persistently. Jin looked around the shop and thought that this place reminded him of a game, but at the same time looked a little different, as if it were already another world. If everything had happened as in the game, Jin most likely would not have even been able to leave the house of Larginia. Looking around, he noticed some mysterious bottle with candies and simply asked aloud what it was. She told him that these were candies that were actually potions for restoring strength. This discovery impressed Jin so much that his eyes widened with surprise. Mane Kendi was the strongest healing item in the final stages of the game. It provided long-lasting regeneration and became indispensable during prolonged magical battles. He quickly asked about the price, and she replied that she charged only 1 silver coin for 10 pieces. Jin was stunned by this discovery. The men from Candies turned out to be incredibly stingy. Seeing his puzzled face, she wondered if it was really such a surprise for him. She said that she made them herself for pleasure, so she could not charge much money for them. With a serious look, Jin asked how much each jar of candies in the shop cost. There were exactly 10 pieces on the counter. So she decided to give a discount and asked for only 5 silver coins for everything. Hearing this, Jin was delighted and immediately agreed to buy. After Jin received mana candy, his joy knew no bounds. They worked just like in the game. Thanks to them, he could use magic effortlessly. Seeing his reaction, Cynthia said she thought he was more mature and serious, but now his eyes were shining with excitement because of Mayor Candy. She added that he really is a very interesting person. In response, he explained that although he really liked these candies, what interested him most was their special effect. Surprised by his words, she explained that these candies simply restore mana gradually, while regular potions for mana restoration return it much faster and in greater amounts. To this, Jin explained that although instant restoration of a large amount is useful, mana candidates are much more convenient and effective for daily use. Cynthia still looked confused, so Jin explained, when someone uses magic, they usually cast simple spells that require very little power. Therefore, instead of drinking a potion each time to restore a small amount of mana, it was much more convenient to simply suck on these candies. This method frees them from the constant hassle of opening and drinking potions, and also allows them to continue fighting in magical battles without interruption, without being distracted from spells. It seems now Cynthia fully understands what is happening on Jinsen's site. Although she said that he did not have to take all 10 healing potions at once, Jen replied, "It is better to be prepared for everything so as not to regret it later." He also told her that these candies are much more useful and effective in battle than ordinary healing potions, so he would continue to come back to buy more. He asked to make as many as possible. Cynthia assured him that she would continue her hobby if he promised to keep buying mana sweets from her. She also asked if he needed anything else. But he sincerely thanked, saying that the armor, weapons, and candies he had were quite enough for today. He was confident that with this equipment, he could finally start a real journey, and promised her that he would always be well prepared from now on. Moreover, she noted that because of his strange behavior, he was easy to lose sight of, as he was a newcomer who had only recently registered as an adventurer. She laughed and said that she had never helped a newcomer as much as she helped him. She added that she believed he would very quickly catch up with the best adventurers, and that her intuition was almost always right. After a short conversation, Jin said goodbye to her and left the store. Time passed and Jin was walking down the street when suddenly a mysterious figure addressed him from a dark alley. Looking more closely, Jin recognized the hooligan he had defeated before. He was furious and shouted that he had been looking for Jin for a long time, promising to take revenge for the humiliation and wipe the smile off his face. Without saying a word, he rushed at Jin and struck forcefully with the new sword, but Jin easily dodged and with a smile remarked that the hooligan had gotten better weapons. The man got even angrier and threatened Jin that he would definitely beat him. Seeing a great opportunity to test his new manipulator, Jin calmly puts one in Andy's mouth and declares that he will bravely face this man. The bully swung his sword with all his might, but Jin easily dodged the blow thanks to his magic. Then he combined his swordsmanship with fire magic and unleashed the power of the blessing of the sword god. Jin was amazed when he saw how strong his power had become thanks to Manatsukurka and the new equipment. Thanks to his sweet helper, his magic recovered much faster. The hooligans were already losing patience as Jin skillfully dodged all their attacks. He tried to attack the genie again with his sword, but the genie struck back accurately with his fiery sword. The man got angry because his belongings burned in the fire. He said indignantly that he would never forgive this. The hooligan tried one last desperate attack, but Jin quickly stepped aside and sharply struck him in the side with the sword hilt, after which he fell to the ground, admitting defeat. Manachandi and the sword turned out to be even better than Jin expected, and he felt great gratitude to Cynthia. But a loud rumbling in his stomach quickly brought him back to reality. He remembered that he had not eaten all day. As Jin walked on, he realized he had not yet decided where to stop, so he decided to find a place where they cooked deliciously. This game has several endings, and finding one that was both affordable and well-equipped was not easy. He thought he would be very happy to eat deliciously and take a hot shower. Soon after, when Jin stood before the fiery dragon, he realized that this was the only end that suited him in every way. Although he tried to relax, one thought would not leave his mind. Soon Jin entered the tavern, shouting loudly and asking whose thing it was. However, he was immediately interrupted by a much older man who sternly said that he could hear him perfectly well without shouting. Chapter 4. Jin quietly laughed at the innkeeper's behavior, knowing that this man, named Ricardo, really added genuine excitement to the game. Ricardo angrily ordered him not to laugh in his face. Then Jin told him that he had a cool restaurant with wonderful food, although he had heard that the owner there was very quarrelsome. To this, Ricardo replied that Jin was completely right, and added that he would throw him out if he just came to quarrel. But Jin said that he planned to stay here longer and asked if there were any free rooms. Fortunately, Ricardo said they had many rooms and offered to choose any to his liking. Jin chose a corner room for 10 days, and Ricardo allowed him to settle on the second floor. When he inquired about meal times, Jin said he would like to have breakfast and dinner. At that moment, Ricardo said that for dinner, there would be a hearty stew with wild boar tenderloin. As soon as Jin heard this, his eyes lit up with excitement. He thought that if this world really was like a game, then the food here must be incredibly delicious. Soon a tasty dish was already in front of Jin, and he looked at it impatiently. Jin took the cutlery in his hands. He carefully cut off a piece of tender boar meat and put it into his mouth. And as soon as he took the first bite, he was immediately struck by the unusual taste. The dish turned out to be 10 times tastier than he could have imagined. He took a sip of the drink and noted that the mead was a bit sweet, but perfectly suited to hearty food. Ricardo explained that in this region, various spices are often added to mead, and it is even used instead of medicine. Moreover, Ricardo noticed that Jin looked tired, so this food was very much needed for him right now. But Jin called him bald and asked not to address him like a child. Then he smiled gratefully and said he was sincerely glad to spend all his money by the end. Hearing this, Ricardo blushed a little as soon as Jin saw him. He mockingly remarked that even the face of a bald man can blush from shame, but Ricardo sharply stopped him, asking not to emphasize his complexes anymore. Distracted from their conversation, Ricardo asked if Jin was short of money, adding that he thought Jin was a wealthy traveler because he immediately paid for 10 days in advance. In response, Jin said that for adventurers like him, it is very important to have a safe place to stay overnight. Besides, it is hardly possible to find a better inn, so he would like to set up a base here. Moreover, Jin noted that he would not taste such delicious wild boar meat anywhere else. Ricardo only replied that he would say nothing if Jin was satisfied. At that moment, Ricardo, noticing Jin's confidence and elegant clothing, asked if Jin would agree to fulfill one of his personal requests. Jin paused for a moment and replied that it all depends on the request itself, because he does not want to stand out. He did not want to attract unnecessary attention that could drag him back onto the dark path he had been warned about. But Ricardo assured him that it was not a big request. He just asked Jin to spy on wars for him. He explained that recently there has been a shortage of boar meat on the market, and his own supplies were almost depleted. Moreover, he was just about to turn to the Adventurers Guild for help in hunting boar right before Jin arrived. Jin thought for a moment and agreed, since hunting a wild boar was not difficult for him, and it would not attract unnecessary attention. The next day, Jin was already standing at the edge of the forest near the capital. He specifically chose this place because no one would notice him here, and further into the forest lived wild boars. Although these were only computer-generated images, Jin could not help but admire the incredible beauty of nature. Jin immediately pulled himself together to prevent his emotions from taking over. Although his first task was not officially through the guild, he was determined to complete it without any mistakes. Jin stopped near the entrance under the force field, gathered mana throughout his body, and activated his skill. With the help of magic, he quickly determined exactly where wild boars were hiding in this area. Finding them was not difficult for him. They turned out to be much closer than you thought. Running up to them, he activated his wind magic and created a magical circle around his hands. With one swift gesture, he raised a powerful wave of wind that covered the boars. And in an instant, this thing sliced their heads in half. With this, the hunt for Jin was over, and he was glad he managed to hunt everything by late evening. But suddenly, an even greater danger attacked him. A huge red bear jumped out from behind. Jin did not expect such a wildly strong attack at all. Preparing to act, Jin wondered if the smell of Borova blackita had attracted this monster. Jin had just swung his sword, but his attack was stopped by another bear, which had just joined the battle. Were these two fierce bears looming over him? Jin wondered if they were a pair. Although hunting was usually not difficult for Jin, this time he could not understand why everything seemed somehow off. Then the bears together rushed forward and attacked him. And Jin immediately prepared his sword, thinking that all the creatures around were real, alive, not like in a game. Moreover, he realized that if these dangerous creatures escaped, they could harm someone else. Without any hesitation, Jin rushed forward and delivered a precise, swift strike. He split the heads of the boards in half. They had no idea at all that their little babies were hiding very close by. The defenseless cubs cautiously came out of hiding and headed towards their parents' heads. Jin still felt a bit of pity for them. Soon he found himself in a quiet corner of the forest. He tried to roast and eat the meat of the defeated bears. He pondered. When he defeated the younger dragon, he had no time for such reflections, but now he realized that he had taken someone's life, even if it was the life of a monster. He thought that the breath of a monster and the warmth of its blood were not like a game at all. Here in battle, every creature truly fights for life. He tried to honor them by eating the roasted meat, but the smell after cooking was so sharp that he simply could not force himself to eat it. so he decided to put the rest of the meat into his inventory to cook it properly later near the fiery dragon source. In the end, he allowed the bear cubs to escape, thinking that this act would not lead him down a dark path. Moreover, Jin thought that if they could die from some other cause anyway, he could hardly help, since this world was not as simple as a game. Suddenly, he heard a female voice behind him. She asked if he was the same boy she had seen before. When Jin looked more closely, it turned out to be Elsa from the guild. Seeing that he was eating the meat of her beloved red bears, she asked if he would share a piece with her. Surprised, Jin asked, "Are rabbit people not herbivores?" To which Elsa briefly replied, 8 parts meat to 2. Like all other sapicidal Jin, she sprinkled the meat with special herbs, explaining that this would help get rid of the sharp taste of roasted raspberry bear. Jin realized that there was still so much in the world he did not know, from special ways of preparing dishes from red bears to how the rabbit people eat meat, and immediately he understood a simple truth: just knowing the rules of the game would no longer help him survive. While Jin was lost in his thoughts, Elsa asked why he looked so confused, and these words caught him off guard. Could it be that he really looked that bad? At that moment, Jin suggested thinking, what if somewhere there was a scroll with the laws of the world? How could she use it to her advantage? Elsa was intrigued by his question and responded with a counter-question. She said that she was very fascinated by a life completely governed by these laws, but even more interested in how all this related specifically to him. She also said that she believed he had some ancient scroll or something similar that he was struggling with, and that was what interested her. Although at first Jin thought Elsa was an easygoing person, now he realized she was not simple at all. Calmly, he replied that he had only given that as an example and nothing more. To this, Elsa said that she was not interested at all, even if such a thing really existed. Moreover, she advised him not to make up stories about it and not to tell others. However, she agreed to share her thoughts and jokingly added that he is so cute she just wants to eat him up. After that, she said that the scroll with the laws of this world would be like a curse to her. The curse that took away adventurers' main trait, curiosity. She explained in more detail. Even if the scroll recorded what the staffs of the purple bears were made of, it still would not reveal their true taste until you try it yourself. In other words, it was a curse, when a person believed they knew everything about the crimson bear just because they had seen its main characteristics. If their knowledge ended there, they definitely would not succeed in the role of an adventurer. She asked if there was any other way to use the meat of the crimson bear, but immediately answered herself. It can be mixed with certain herbs to attract other monsters. As soon as she finished speaking, a huge dragon flew over their heads, and it was then that she noticed that curiosity truly awakens the spirit of adventure. When Elsa began to approach the large animal, she told Jin to just sit and watch how she would handle it herself. She said that this beast was very fast, and she had already had to spend a lot of time to catch it. Additionally, she shared that the roasted crimson bear is the favorite dish of dragons. Gina was not particularly surprised by this, as she already knew about Elsa's cunning. He thought that luring monsters with the smell of fried meat. He had never seen such a trick in any of his games, and once again realized that losing interest was a true curse. Without wasting a second, Elsa grabbed the sword and rushed at the giant creature. He quickly struck the dragon, and blood flowed from the wound. But she misunderstood the situation, and the dragon instantly got on its feet, surprising her suddenly. But Jin did not hesitate for a second. He boldly rushed straight at the dragon. And with a clean, clear delivery, he instantly defeated the huge creature. Seeing his courage, Elsa praised his skill, and he replied that he just wanted to test how good his sword was in a fight with a dragon. Moreover, he said that Elsa could quite manage everything on her own. Jin realized that he needed to immerse himself even more in this world, because surprises can happen at any time, and relying only on one's own strength won't get you far. To truly avoid straying onto the dark path, Jin understood that he needed to stop thinking only about profit. Now he decided, for his survival, to connect all the unexpected encounters and events that happen on his way. Judging by his reaction, everyone decided that he had already dealt with his problems. She said that adventures are a true explosive curiosity, and added that she herself would choose her path and bear responsibility for it alone. At that moment, she gently kissed him on the cheek and said goodbye. She said that this is how she expresses her gratitude. That was the end of it, and Jin decided to return home to report on the completion of the first task. After some time, Jin came to the hotel, and Ricardo told him that he had almost missed dinner because he arrived late. But seeing Jin's facial expression, Ricardo asked if something important had happened to him, since Jin suddenly seemed like a true adventurer. To this question, Chin did not explain anything, but simply told him about the request. He explained that he rents a storage room because he has many things with him. When Jin began to summon dead borers from his inventory, Ricardo was impressed to see how he uses preservation magic. Also, Jin told him that everything he puts into his inventory remains fresh because time stops there. Ricardo was simply amazed that Jin even had such a rare skill. He was even more surprised why Jin was still poor despite having such a valuable ability. To this, Jin only replied that it was a long story. Ricardo pointed to the boar bodies and said that each of them was shot very precisely. In response, Jin explained that they fell from just one wind spell, and most of them probably did not even realize they had died. Hearing this, Ricardo said he would understand if such a thing was done by a high-level master mage, but for a novice like Jin, it should be impossible. Ricardo pressed him even harder. They began to ask what kind of life Jin had led up to that point, but Jin refused to say anything, explaining that the personal life of adventurers is a forbidden topic for conversation. At that moment, Ricardo handed him a pouch of coins. That was the gratitude for the fulfilled request. Although the task was simple, Jin said that completing it was not easy for various reasons. At that moment, Jin opened his inventory again and took out another piece of meat. And as soon as Ricardo saw it, he was immediately surprised. In front of him lay the meat of a red bear. Jin explained that he initially tried to cook this dish himself, but due to the strong smell, he could not eat it. So he asked the rabbit chef to prepare everything for him. Hearing this, Ricardo immediately asked if it was about Elsa, and when Jin confirmed, he was even more surprised. Ricardo realized that Jen really tried the legendary meat seasoned with herbs. He even said that she was lucky to taste it. It was said that rabbits are very good at herbs, especially Elsa. She is truly a professional in this matter. Moreover, he addressed Jin and noted that although Elsa sometimes seems frivolous, her skills and knowledge are truly at the highest level. After that, Ricardo took the piece of meat and promised to prepare a dish for Jin that would rival Elsa's famous herb-roasted meat. At that moment, Ricardo threw the red bear meat onto a hot pan, added aromatic spices and rich sauces to create a true culinary masterpiece. Soon, a special stew dish of red bear and red wine was served to Jin. He looked very interested at the meat, which looked simply wonderful. Jin could not help but remark that Ricardo cooks extraordinarily refined dishes, nothing like one would expect judging by his appearance. As soon as Jin took the first bite, it was so delicious that he couldn't even find the words. Ricardo added that such an exquisite dish deserves a good fruit wine, and even suggested to drink a glass with him for that. Meanwhile, at the other end of the city, the guild thanked Elsa for her work on the excitement and praised her incredible skills. Elsa simply said that they owed all their victory to that young boy, which made Fane a little confused. Then Elsa asked if Fane had received permission to register the partnership. Fane nodded and hopefully asked if maybe Elsa was finally looking for a partner, but Elsa replied that she preferred to stay alone. She also told Fane that she felt that perhaps a real prince would soon visit her. She added that it was normal to dream and be curious, as that is how true adventurers behave. The next day, Jenner died in the guild house and was warmly welcomed, who immediately asked if he was ready to hear the request. But Jin explained that he came to register in the guild as a partner, specifically with the receptionist, as this gives adventurers many advantages. The main reason is that the receptionist they cooperate with will prioritize their applications. In return, the guild receives a part of the adventurer's reward. In this game world, the guild itself sought adventurers who began to stand out and show good results. Fane said that there were no problems with such a deal, but she had never heard of newcomers registering a partner. But Jin reassured her, saying she shouldn't worry about him. He had enough money and was completely confident in his abilities. Besides, he was confident that he could become useful to the guild. Fane explained that Jin could choose his own partner. He asked if there was anyone among the administrators with whom Jin would like to work, and clarified that if this administrator already had a partner, it would be taken into account. They advised to turn to someone else. Jin asked if Fane already had a partner, but she denied it and said that only yesterday she received confirmation of the contract. To her surprise, Jin admitted that he wanted her to be the partner because from the very beginning, when he became an adventurer, she had taken care of him. First, check if everything has already been done, but if something is wrong, immediately start correcting the contract. She said she would do it if he didn't mind. Jin was pleased because now, thanks to this cooperation, he could ask for things that were previously unavailable to him. Suddenly, unexpectedly, a man with a hoarse voice shouted. He questioned Jin whether he was really signing a partnership contract with Fane, or maybe he just heard something wrong. When Jen confirmed this, the man. He shook his head, not believing his eyes, and said that this was exactly why he didn't like children like Jen. Moreover, the man grimaced maliciously and complained that this would also create extra trouble for him with a fine. They failed the task because of him. He explained that Find was kind enough to deal with a child like him, but added that it really annoyed him when someone who doesn't even know their own abilities pretends to be an adventurer. In a fit of passion, he sharply said that he had been watching Fane for a long time and immediately swung his fist in anger. However, Jin, as always cunning, easily stepped aside and placed his foot right in the man's path. He tripped and fell face first into the ground. Could this really be a defeat for such a brave man? Jen noticed that only Fane truly cared about him when he was a novice, and he was the one who knew best what a good person Fane was. He shouted even louder, saying that he would never make Fane cry, especially such a person who loves adventures so much. He promised to do everything to make Fane happy by his side. But the man no longer argued and simply demanded that Jin step back, but when Jin looked back, he blushed seeing Fane and Elsa behind him. Heltz took advantage of the moment and began joking about Jin because of his words, asking if Jin could really make her happy. At that time, Fane blushed and could not hide her shyness. Shortly after this heated argument, Jen and Fane stood side by side, reaching out to the magic book. This was how they concluded a partnership agreement, and it was the first time for Jen. In the game, it simply looked like a pop-up window with a message that their contract was concluded. But here there was a real solemn ceremony where they promised to be partners and always support each other. When everything was over, both Jin and Fane were very happy and already looking forward to working together. During their conversation, Elsa entered the room and asked if she was disturbing. Fane assured her that everything was fine. Elsa said that everyone was just waiting for a good opportunity to drink and eagerly wanted the oath ceremony to end sooner. After signing the contract, everyone raised their glasses and happily congratulated each other. Meanwhile, Jean told Fine that as partners, she wanted to know everything about him right away. Immediately, he opened his status window and showed all his impressive characteristics. He thanked the fighters from the Berev and Red Bear squads for helping him strengthen his skills so much. He thought, maybe the reason for such rapid development lies in his unique abilities, which themselves accelerate growth. However, when she saw his incredible stats, she immediately wondered who he really was. Jean said that just a few days ago he was simply a noble child, but now, having fled the estate, he considers himself an ordinary person. Well, with a confident look, she stated that an ordinary person cannot have such impressive characteristics. Moreover, she added that even by level, he almost equals a silver adventurer. The rank distribution looked just like in computer games. In this world, the class system is divided into 6 levels: platinum, gold, silver, bronze, iron, and wooden. Platinum is the highest level, but Jean is still counted only at the wooden rank. Fine noted that with such high characteristics, he would easily be able to perform even monster extermination tasks and handle almost any request. She also asked if Jean had any weaknesses, and he admitted that he was bad at one-on-one battles. Feeling this, she said it was inevitable, since he was only 12 years old, and wondered how he could even train in one-on-one duels. At that very moment, the same man whom Jin had previously defeated asked if Jin wanted to train with him one-on-one. He reminded Yen that he had not forgotten the old grudge and promised that this time he would act more gently. Fine immediately intervened and reminded that fighting on guild territory was strictly forbidden. But the man immediately reassured her that it was all just for fun. They would only borrow a room in the back for a little while. Jin also became interested in this proposal, since in a quiet place no one would pay extra attention to him. Since everything was already decided, Jin hinted to the man that he should not joke with him either and that he was not going to give in. Then in a distant abandoned corner of the guild building, Jin and the man stood facing each other. The man mockingly said that it was good they were fighting here where no one could see, because if Jin lost, at least he would not be disgraced in front of everyone. To this, Jin replied just as wittily. The man explained the rules. After 3 steps from their place, they would turn around and start the fight. But he suddenly sneaked up on Jin, sharply turned and attacked on the 2nd step. Jin barely stayed on his feet. The man shouted that the main rule in a duel is to always remember that the opponent can act dishonestly. Jin immediately blocked the attack, thinking that today he simply had no right to lose, since he had just formed a partnership with Fine. The man kept attacking and noted that Jin really had good skills, since he was able to block his strikes. Jin immediately took a step back, then swiftly lunged at the man. He knocked the sword out of the man's hand and threw it aside. The man realized he had already lost. Without hesitation, he bowed to Jin and apologized for bothering him, which greatly surprised Jin. Although Jin did not suspect it, the man was still hiding a cunning move. The man snapped his fingers and immediately cast a spell, causing everything to blur in Jin's eyes. Jin was still amazed that this man possessed magic. The man smiled slyly and said that he never mentioned the battle would be only with swords. Then he gave Jin another piece of advice: never fully trust your opponent, because people often lie. However, Jin's vision gradually cleared, and he immediately activated his ability that protects him from all kinds of anomalies. The man gave another piece of advice: never lose vigilance before an opponent. Then he calmly admitted that he was actually a bronze adventurer. Without wasting a second, Jin activated divine grace and strengthened his magic. At the same time, he quickly composed himself and turned around to look the man in the face, but whose eyes widened in surprise when he saw Fine standing right behind the man, firmly holding a frying pan and barely restraining her anger. Seeing Jin suddenly and strangely change his expression, the man involuntarily turned around. But here he was hit hard with a frying pan with a loud clang. Still angry, Fine reminded both that fighting in the guild is strictly forbidden. Meanwhile, Elsa, who was watching this with a smile, told Jin that he had found himself a truly useful partner. At that moment, Jin realized that under no circumstances should he get involved with Fine. Meanwhile, at the celebration, everyone was discussing whether Jin now intends to be independent. Jin replied that he would like to have companions, because then he could take on more different tasks. Moreover, he believed that improving one's skills together is the essence of a true adventure. When she heard this, the girl admitted that she did not expect such interest from him, but Jin explained that it was precisely her view on adventures that attracted him. Then the scene changed abruptly, and we saw Jinstead standing on uneven terrain, preparing to hunt the Vorks. The advantages of the partnership agreement turned out to be truly significant, as Jin is still amazed that he is now offered such profitable orders, even despite the risks. He looked around, realized that he had finally gotten to work, but it was difficult for him. He was surprised when he noticed fresh blood stains on the stone nearby. At first, he thought that someone had probably already fought with orcs here, but then he remembered. Fane told him that no one else had passed this way. He was gripped by panic, because he realized that the blue light would definitely attract other monsters. Suddenly, out of nowhere, big and scary orcs appeared right behind his back and caught him by surprise. However, he did not look very scared. On the contrary, he felt a surge of strength and was ready to immediately deal with these monsters and finally finish his important business. He quickly waved his hand and immediately used his fire magic. He rushed at the monsters and precisely cut each of them. As soon as the opponents fell dead, he immediately used storage magic and carefully removed their bodies. Without wasting a second, he continued moving forward as he was still alive. He quickly activated his ability to detect magic. Soon he noticed that several people were rapidly approaching him. Jin wondered whether they were really adventurers or just running away from someone, as there were no signs of other monsters around. At another corner, he noticed a solitary figure who seemed to be fighting red bears. Their magic was noticeably weakening. Jin immediately realized that the blue color he had seen earlier was connected to this adventure, so he instantly rushed to them to help. Jin used his victory magic without hesitation, and used it to speed up and immediately be next to the one who needed help. Meanwhile, the poor girl named Chloe was desperately fleeing from the fierce red bears, trying to save her life. She tried to attack the monsters, but it was all in vain. The bears easily knocked her to the ground with their sharp claws. Chloe lay defeated before these terrible creatures. They showed their sharp fangs, preparing to attack. But as soon as the monsters lunged at her, Jin managed to arrive just in time and easily cut their heads in half. Immediately after Jin defeated the red bears, he turned to Chloe and smiled warmly, saying he was glad to arrive on time. Jim quickly carried these giant bodies to his hideout. Then he extended his hand to help her get dressed. She was noticeably confused, but Jin still helped her to stand up. Next, they asked why she fought these monsters alone in such a dangerous place. Chloe told that her companions cruelly used her as bait to escape from the monsters themselves. Jin immediately wondered if these same adventurers had crossed his path earlier when he used his magical ability to detect others. He felt sorry for their audacity and noted that deception is the worst violation in the adventurer's code. Moreover, Closton was very scared and trembling when she said that the chase terrified her terribly, and she immediately realized she was doomed when she accidentally wandered into a work territory. However, Jin confidently assured her that now she was under his protection and could relax. Chloe immediately thanked him for coming to help in time. He helped her reach the nearest tree and offered to treat her wounds. Then he carefully treated her wounds with medicine, reassuring her that everything would heal quickly. She got upset and apologized that he had spent such expensive treatment because of her. But Jin cheered her up by telling her that a kind elf sold him these medicines at a discount for emergencies, and he silently thanked Cynthia. Chloe could not resist and remembered that he is a very mysterious person. After all, he has an elf friend and was able to defeat monsters on his own. Jane was pleasantly surprised by her praise. Then he extended his hand to introduce himself. Chloe also gladly shook his hand and gave her name. Then he suggested resting a bit, and only after that returning to the guild to tell about those liars who deceived Chloe and used her as bait. In the guild hall, those adventurers who left their clothes behind are now loudly arguing over a fine. They explained that it was Chloe who got scared and ran away, leaving them behind. Everyone complained indignantly that they had to clean up the problems after her, but Chloe suddenly appeared and surprised everyone a lot. She unexpectedly asked in a calm voice who was being talked about. Her appearance surprised everyone so much that everyone froze. The group members immediately pulled themselves together and quickly pretended to be concerned about her. They asked if she was okay and said they were very worried about her. Taking advantage of the moment, one of the participants quietly whispered to her not to reveal anything, as they were about to move up to the Bronze League. Moreover, they assured her they were ready to take her back on the team if she just matured a little. Suddenly, Jean intervened and loudly denied that they had deliberately used Chloe as bait to escape from the Red Bears. The team members immediately pounced on Jin, started scolding him and telling him not to talk nonsense. Another of them, Agar Shivli, intervened, indignantly stating that Jin could not have defeated the Red Bear alone and returned unharmed, and demanded proof. Wasting no more time, Jin immediately pulled the bodies of the Red Bears from his inventory and showed them to everyone. Seeing this undeniable evidence, Fine instantly took out her favorite weapon, a frying pan, and sternly warned that for such an act they would be stripped of their adventurer status and banned from registering again for a year. They would be forced to work for half a year as ordinary guild couriers, and a significant part of the group's property would immediately pass to the new owners. When the participants tried to object to Fine's decision, her terrifying gaze instantly silenced them. Then she bowed deeply to Chloe and apologized for the guild not conducting a proper investigation and unintentionally putting her in such danger. Upset, Chloe replied that maybe she was to blame herself for deciding to trust people, even sensing their deceit. She turned to Jin and said that something much worse could have happened to her if he had not appeared in time, but Jin only asked her not to worry and remarked that he was just doing his job. At that moment, Jin asked if he could report on the completion of the task, but everyone was amazed to learn that he not only completed the task, but also saved someone's life. Without stopping, he took out from the inventory more boar carcasses and a bloody bear, modestly saying that it was not difficult for him at all, and called the encounter with the bloody bear an additional task. Clow leaned towards Fine and carefully asked if Jin's abilities were stronger than the silver class level. Fine replied that she was not sure, but maybe he really was silver class or even higher. Then Fine told Jin that he would quickly level up if he found good partners. Claw, with excitement in her eyes, immediately asked if he was looking for a team. To this, Jin only remarked that soulplay has its own limitations. And adventures became more interesting when growing up together with friends. Clue added with a smile that she had always felt the same way. She said that in childhood, she read adventure books and dreamed of having her own friends for adventures. Jin looked at her with admiration and suggested going on an exciting adventure together. Later, he added that with a closed profile, she perfectly met his requirements, and immediately said that on his part, there were no objections if everything was finalized. Chloe quietly asked with hope in her voice if Jin really didn't mind having someone like her as a partner, but he only smiled warmly and assured her that she was perfect. After they officially became partners, Clow asked Jin if he minded if she went first. He inquired if Clow knew how to fight well on the front line. She explained that she possessed Bodhi enhancement magic and had a third-level sword mastery. Thanks to these two skills, she was confident she could stand up for herself. She continued to do everything as before. At that moment, the Finnarid openly said that the guild considered her the best in reconnaissance and added that she had the perfect mission for their new team. The next day at the tavern Fire Dragon, Jen came and greeted Ricardo, and he immediately told her that he already had a guest. Moreover, Ricardo said he had specially prepared breakfast so that Jin wouldn't have to wait. Jin jokingly thanked him, adding that he didn't expect such attentiveness from such a stern guy as Ricardo. Although Ricardo was a bit annoyed, he assured that he would pay for the guest's breakfast. Soon Jin entered the room and saw Cory sitting right in front of them, enthusiastically saying that the breakfast at this inn was simply incredible. Jen told her that she had come too early, but when Chloe asked if she was disturbing, he replied that he was just worried she would have to wait even longer if he hadn't overslept. Clove laughed and admitted that she could not sit still because she was very nervous about their first joint adventure. In response, Jin also showed his nervousness. He said that he had hardly slept, thinking about their first joint trip. After some time, they reached a rocky area, and Jin said they were already sure a tall orc really lives here. Clow clarified that it is not enough just to remove that tall structure to complete the task. It is also necessary to return the materials in the best possible condition. As they walked further, Jean wondered if her scouting skills could spot the tall orcs faster than his magical sense. He asked if she felt them nearby. She pressed her ear to the ground and advised them to go around from the leeward side and move towards the sound. When he asked again, she explained that she heard something like loud footsteps or the rustling of gears. She also said that she would even track smells and remember her sensations to find every hidden clue of this important case. He called her skill incredible and even admitted that he could not match such unique abilities as those of a beastman like her, and at that very moment, Cello heard something. She rushed that way and told Jin that she felt 2 tall orcs and 3 regular ones. Jin was surprised that she could determine this from such a great distance. Now he understood why the guild valued her so highly. She was truly very skilled at detecting enemies, even better than him at this task. At that moment, she warned him to be careful, because it seemed to her that something was wrong with this place, as if the clues themselves were begging to be noticed. Jean thought that the tall orcs were much smarter than the ordinary ones, and suspected that they might try to lure them into a trap, so he immediately suggested first scouting everything thoroughly and then acting. They quickly ran forward and hid in the nearby bushes, watching the orcs from afar unnoticed. He said that everything happened just as she said. There were 2 tall orcs, whom he decided to defeat using his magic. The entire Clow squad took on holding back the enemy at the front line. When both prepare for battle, Jin instantly remembered his ability to control the wind and attack the orcs' territory, momentarily stunning all the monsters. And the clown rushes forward and directly confronts the monsters. Jin thought that if they were already so close to the monsters, he could detect them even more accurately. Without wasting time, he activated his magic sense. They noticed even more fire orcs cleverly hidden in the mud. Then Jin realized why Chloe could not detect them with her usual abilities. The orcs were deliberately luring them into a trap. When the orc swung his weapon, Clow quickly dodged and immediately charged at him. But the orc's strength was much greater, and he began to gain the upper hand in the fight. In a moment, the monsters rushed at her and swung their swords, but Jin instantly entered the fight, easily cutting off their heads using his wind magic. Then he warned her not to relax, as the danger was not over yet. Soon a whole pack of bloodthirsty orcs descended on them, threateningly looming over them. Chloe trembled with fear. Tears appeared in her eyes. She had no idea what to do in such a situation. She began to worry that she would be used as bait again, but Jen calmed her with a sincere smile. He encouraged her, saying that she would definitely be able to handle it. Without any warning, a crowd of monsters rushed at them, but Jin quickly created a magic circle and immediately used a combination of enhancement magic and wind magic. He gave Chloe some time to react, and at that moment covered his sword with powerful wind magic. Although she hesitated at first, she then boldly charged at the orcs and confidently dealt with each one, easily swinging her sword. Seeing this outfit, you cannot contain your power. Jin smiled, jumping to her, and gently asked if she was all right. Her body was still trembling. She ran up to Jin and said that if he hadn't held back the tall orcs with his magic, they wouldn't have had a chance against them. She was delighted at how Jin skillfully filled her sword with wind magic, and Jin simply said that he needed to bring quality materials. Besides, he praised Chloe for her incredible abilities. But she admitted with a sad smile that she was afraid to be left alone again. Deep down, she understood that Jin wouldn't do that, but still apologized to him for even thinking that. But Jin reassured her, telling her not to worry about such trifles, since after all, they were at a party. Their first joint adventure was successful, but even more important than the victory was that they became friends. Later, they reached the guild building and reported on the completed work, who was very surprised that they had completed their task so quickly. Moreover, Fane reminded them that they still had a few days to complete the task, but she knew only someone like Jin could handle this task in one day. It was also noticed that her gaze became softer, and distrust of people almost disappeared. Clow looked surprised after such a remark, but did not object and gave all the credit to Jen. At that moment, Jin felt a true déjà vu and realized that something similar had happened to him in the game before. At the same moment, an expression appeared on Jin's face, as if he had just understood. There really is a character in the game named Clot Distrustful. This hint was completely unlike the previous ones. In the game, she was a dark, scary heroine who did not trust people at all. And she never really opens up to anyone because of her inner nature. Jin felt cold sweat pour over him when he realized that now he would have to team up with one of the key heroines, although at first he just wanted to run away from this story. Moreover, today he had already managed to get into a similar situation with her. She noticed that there was great interaction between them, so she was confident they would succeed excellently in exploring the dungeons. She enthusiastically told how quickly she could find traps, and Jin confidently added that he could easily defeat monsters with his magic. Jin agreed that together they would make a great team. He understood that exploring dungeons would allow him to have adventures without attracting unnecessary attention. At that moment, Fine asked if she should start looking for dungeons and recommend suitable ones. Jin immediately agreed without hesitation. Dungeons were places where God tested people, and that is exactly how so many dungeons appeared in this world. Near the royal capital, too, there were dungeons, and every day many brave adventurers tried to pass through them. Although dangerous monsters and numerous traps lurk at every step in the dungeon, such places are always the main part of great adventure stories. When real dungeon adventures were already on the horizon, Jen realized they were truly becoming real adventurers. Chloe barely contained her excitement before the upcoming adventure, but there were two types of dungeons, unrefined and already refined, and it was the refined dungeon that was recommended for the first time. As in the game world, here the dungeons were created randomly, and their layout often changed, so ordinary maps were almost useless. Having obtained permission from the guard at the entrance, Jin entered the dungeon. Chloe immediately asked how deep they would go today. Jin replied that for a start he wanted to reach the 3rd level, and if all went well, he would go even further. She agreed but reminded him of an important piece of advice, not to try too hard and not to overwork himself. The Jin, opening the huge gates, said he believed they could pass the dungeon only thanks to their skills, but agreed that listening to advice was wise. But as soon as they entered, Chloe simply could not believe her eyes. A bright sun was hanging in the middle of the dungeon. Jin added with great surprise that not only the sun moves freely, but also the wind with the water. He explained that in some dungeons you can encounter a very strange combination of environments. For example, a snowy plain can immediately follow a volcanic layer, and on another level you can see a night sky studded with moons. He explained that the true secret is hidden in the mysterious dungeon. That is why adventurers like them try to uncover its secrets. Radiating admiration, the friends suggested exploring the mysterious dungeon together. He replied with the same confidence, admitting that he also dreams of becoming stronger soon and setting off on great adventures. But their lively conversation was suddenly interrupted by her alertness. She felt something wrong and quickly informed him that someone unfamiliar had appeared far away. He could not help but admire her true reconnaissance abilities. Without wasting more time, he activated magical senses and immediately detected several goblins right ahead. And no one even noticed that they were nearby. He immediately informed Chloe about the 3 goblins and said that one of them had already noticed them. He also warned her that some mage was prowling nearby. Then he warned her to be careful, because although this is only the 1st level, these monsters are nothing like those encountered before. Jin smiled confidently and said that the deeper you go into the dungeon, the stronger the monsters become. He suggested immediately testing their strength in the next battle. In a few minutes, the drops of dew found themselves face to face with danger. Terrible goblins stood before them, and when Jin looked more closely, it immediately became clear that one of them was a goblin mage. As soon as he waved his hand, his comrades instantly drew their weapons and rushed into attack. With full confidence, Chloe rushed straight at the enemies, and Jin decided to fight the god Naj on his own. The goblin mage quietly whispered a spell, summoned fire magic, and hurled a fiery projectile directly at Jin. But he reacted quickly, using water magic to create a shield and weaken the monster's attack. Immediately in response, he used his own magic to buy enough time to rush forward and strike precisely with the sword. As for Klaus, she quickly finished her fight and said it was unexpectedly boring and without tension, and Jin considered the skirmish pathetic. He noted that even the goblin mage, who was considered stronger, turned out to be not so dangerous after all, but Chloe reminded him that they were still only at the 1st level. She added that she felt this creature used its brain a bit more actively than the stupid monsters outside. Gina confirmed, Yes, it really behaves more cleverly and makes small tactical maneuvers. While they continued their brief conversation, they did not notice how the goblin mage slowly got back on his feet. Jin immediately realized the fight was not over yet, and upon closer inspection, his gaze stopped on a magical item. A bead glittered on the goblin's neck. When the goblin attacked, the heroes barely managed to dodge, and sharp stones suddenly burst from the floor. When Clow rushed forward with the sword, the monster instantly grabbed it. Then he responded by striking with a powerful fire spell and forcefully threw the opponent back. They hadn't even blinked when the goblin began humming a new spell, forming two huge fireballs. Worried stricken, Chloe asked what they should do next, but Jin calmly assured her, if they stay calm, they will definitely handle this. When the creature threw two fire spheres at them, he immediately ordered her to dodge to the side. But when two deadly dangers simultaneously approached her, she froze, not knowing where to run. Without wasting time, Jin instantly intervened and created a water magic shield in front of himself to protect from danger. He smiled gently at her and in a soft voice advised her to calm down and take a deep breath. He also assured that he would definitely protect her in any situation. At that moment, Jin used water enhanced by magic and asked Clof if he was now ready to deal with the goblin. Fortunately, she confidently said that she was fine. The goblin threw another fireball. But Jin quickly used his water magic, creating a shining shield around Chloe, and immediately ordered her to act, encouraging her to give her all. She skillfully and continuously swung the sword until she instantly defeated the goblin monster. She quickly ran to Jin, making sure that the creature would not rise again, and he added that there was absolutely no place for peace or carefreeness in this dungeon. However, he asked if Chloe thought that the monsters outside the dungeon were stronger. She confirmed this unequivocally. Chloe also admitted that at first she was a little nervous, but after the fight she realized it was not that scary. Then Jin suggested first, just to see how strong the monsters on the first level were, and only then think about whether it was worth going down to the third. After a few minutes they moved further into the depths of the dungeon. Jin thought that if he did not immediately go deeper than the third level, his presence here would not stand out. They effortlessly passed to the third level, and Chloe asks disappointedly if this is all the dungeon is capable of. Jin added that all the monsters up to the third layer were very weak, and recalled that further on there were significantly more of them. Moreover, with calm confidence, she noted that at first she was surprised to meet an unfamiliar goblin mage, but now even if there were more goblins, it would no longer make a special impression on her. Seeing her reaction, Jin thought she looked somewhat dissatisfied since they passed all the levels without problems. Then Jin noted that their combined skills would definitely be enough to move further, even beyond the third level. Next, they asked if it would be comfortable for Chloe to go down one more level. A spark immediately appeared in her eyes, and she admitted that she also thought about diving even deeper into it. But before Jin could do anything, he was stumbled upon by a group of unfamiliar adventurers who desperately begged for help. They said they had reached the fourth level, but fierce monsters immediately attacked them there. Then another participant nervously asked if they could share some healing potion with them. Jin immediately shared his supplies without hesitation. The adventurers sincerely thanked him for the help. Before leaving, they warned, if Jin was going to the fourth level, he needed to be very careful because it was a completely different, much more dangerous world than the third. Moreover, with unusual facial expressions, they prayed for the safety of this pair and asked who they were. Jin hesitated to say his name because he did not want unnecessary acquaintances and did not like to stand out from the crowd. Without hesitation, Chloe boldly told them their names. Before setting off further, the adventurers promised that they would definitely tell the guild about their bravery. Meanwhile, Chloe enthusiastically talked about how she wanted to explore the fourth layer, and Jin could only silently not believe what she was hearing. They opened the gates to the fourth level, and as soon as they entered, Chloe immediately noted that the landscape here was completely different. But then they saw a formidable orc in front of them. Jin added that not only the nature around had changed. Soon they easily defeated the orcs. Jin praised the clothing. She noticed that she didn't even give him a chance to intervene and help, and she herself was surprised at how easily they managed to handle it. He simply suggested maintaining this good momentum before future challenges. On the way, they encountered various unusual buildings and unique monsters. Thus, they reached the 8th floor, and Chloe asked whether they were really that strong, or perhaps the dungeon was just weak. In response, Jin said that they were indeed strong, as this dungeon is generally recommended for adventurers with a silver rank. Next, as they moved forward, a huge entrance to the main enemy's room appeared before them. Jin asks if Chloe is fully ready before opening the huge gates. But as soon as they open the door, immediately, they found themselves facing the goblin leader, who was accompanied by a whole bunch of his subordinates. Jin said that the goblin chief was clearly the main one in this dungeon, and Chloe noted that there were more goblins here than she expected. However, he reassured her that everything would be fine if they carefully watched out for the large number of enemies. As soon as the leader snapped his fingers, all the goblins immediately rushed at both heroes. Chloe prepared herself and began to fend off their attack. She noticed that these goblins acted much more cohesively than those on the upper floors. The goblin leader looked at them attentively, but Jin quickly composed himself and used wind magic to instantly deal with all the goblins around Chloe. Then the goblin mages began to simultaneously attack her with fire spells. But she easily avoided all these dangers and defeated every opponent. When there were very few goblins left, the survivors were even afraid to come out to meet them. Unexpectedly but correctly, the monster leader grabbed the frightened goblins and began killing them one by one. Jin asked if this creature was going crazy. It turned out that the goblin leader absorbs the power of other monsters. Now this creature became even more powerful thanks to the new energy. While the beast attacked and tried to bite, Jin skillfully dodged and jumped on it. Even if it goes crazy, it is still just a goblin. Without wasting a second, he immediately unleashed a powerful flame using his enhanced fire magic. And the monster struck with all its might, delivering a devastating blow to him. When the monster stepped onto the ground and rushed forward with a true fire in its eyes, Chloe could not help but admire its incredible strength and skill. Jin confidently demonstrated his power and noted that it was just simple fire magic that anyone could learn. Then he suggested going to claim the well-deserved reward. In the game, when you go through a dungeon, you usually receive proof of victory and random rewards. Chloe was very happy to find out what was inside the chest. And as soon as Jen opened it, everyone immediately looked her in the eyes. She literally lit up with joy upon seeing the elemental magic manual. She knew that such a thing was very rare and could not hide her excitement. And Jin suggested returning to the guild and celebrating their victory. Then the attention shifted to the guild house, where Fine simply could not believe her ears listening to this couple. She could not fully trust them, so she doubted again whether they really completed the dungeon in just half a day. Jin replied that everything turned out to be even easier than they thought and showed her the proof of task completion. She carefully examined the item through a magnifying glass and said that the boss was the goblin leader, who could only be defeated by silver-level adventurers. She asked again if they defeated him together, but Clover admitted that Jin did everything alone and left this matter for last. Fine was simply amazed. Then he sincerely congratulated both of them on successfully completing the dungeon. But as soon as they were about to go celebrate, they immediately stopped drinking gin and he inquired whether he could spare some time after that. Because of this, Jin felt very uneasy. Fine later complained that she didn't quite like his impressive skills, effectively shifting all the responsibility onto Jin. With a serious expression, she said that he stood out too much. He saved Chloe from danger, completed a bunch of tasks in a day, and even cleared the dungeon in just half a day. Moreover, she said that people also said he helped others in that dungeon. Jin immediately understood that it was about those adventurers she had met earlier in the dungeon. Find him and inform him that the guildmaster is calling him. This made him think that he really stood out too much if the guildmaster herself summoned him. In the game, the guildmistress always appeared calm, but in reality, she was cheerful and very popular. According to the plot, he was not supposed to meet her at all. Suddenly, a silhouette appeared behind him, and this person said with surprise that Jin looked much younger than she expected. She greeted him warmly and introduced herself as Shitsutsu, the guildmaster of the Adventurers Guild in the royal capital. But Jin did not dare to turn around and look her in the eye. Not noticing how she appeared, he awkwardly introduced himself as a novice adventurer, having no idea what to do next. When Jin realized that Asuka was not supposed to be in the capital at this stage of events, he quickly said that he heard she was currently on a business trip somewhere far away. Asuka smiled and remarked that he knew too much for a novice. She explained that she had heard about an interesting traveler from Find and couldn't resist, so she returned immediately after finishing her business. She lightly placed her hands on his shoulder, which immediately made Jin feel uncomfortable. She suggested going to a cozy place to talk calmly. However, Jin could not get rid of the thought that communicating with her might bring serious trouble. Since Jin was one of those wanted in the game, hero of the Sacred Sword and the 7 Battle Maidens, he tried to refuse, explaining that he was not feeling very well. But it was already too late to avoid the power of the guildmaster, and fall asleep peacefully. When Asuka took his hand and led him to her room, he begged her to simply forget about him after this brief conversation, but Asuka only smiled and said he was saying strange things, and that only intrigued her more. In a few minutes, they were already comfortably settled in the room, and Asuka asked if he was trying to avoid her because of his noble origin. Jennifer earned all this by thinking that she had really conducted the previous research as he had expected. She also persistently asked where he had learned such impressive magic and masterful swordsmanship, as she had never before met anyone with such unique abilities. Jean asked how much she knew about him, but she did not answer directly. She only smiled and said that maybe she knew everything about him. Then Jin admitted that he truly had a natural talent, and only his late mother knew how strong he really was. He told no one else about it. She jokingly said that he did not have to lay all his cards on the table right away, then quickly sat down next to him, and added with interest that she had never met such an interesting person as he. She gently stroked his head, but he still asked hopefully for everything to be fine. Silently thanked for the help, Fane quickly intervened and stood between them, firmly asking Asuka not to put Gent in such an awkward position. At first, Asuka tried to object, but as soon as she saw the famous Fane's frying pan, she immediately agreed. Jin quietly said that Asuka was surprisingly obedient today, but she leaned towards him and whispered that she becomes truly scary when angry. Jen could not disagree. He himself knew well how hot-tempered Fane could be, and at that very moment, called Kaldashuk to finish his unfinished work. Jin mentally thanked Fane for intervening and saving him from the guildmaster. The scene shifted to a quiet, deserted area where Jen and Chloe were gathering their remaining belongings. Jin quickly packed the trophies into his inventory and said that now they could take the test for the bronze class. Chloe immediately agreed, wanting to return to the guild as soon as possible and tell Fane everything. Returning to the guild, they carefully checked the report on the completed task and immediately began the testing process for the bronze class. Chloe noted that the team focused on gathering information and completing several tasks, and they managed everything in just 3 days. Fane noticed that Jen did not look too enthusiastic about the idea of challenging the bronze class so quickly. He replied that he was glad but did not want to stand out too much by quickly rising in the rankings. However, Fane objected, if you stay in one place too long, that will also attract attention. Moreover, she informed him that Shuhak had already issued a strict confidentiality order regarding him. This made Jen realize that although everything happened earlier than she expected, the promotion turned out to be the most convenient option. He thought that even in case of unforeseen events, adventurers of bronze rank or higher can freely travel between countries and cities, and he definitely had nothing to worry about since the guildmistress herself guarantees the protection of his personal information. He also asked if Chloe could also take the test together with their team and find the degree without any complaints. She explained that the test would be conducted in the format of an individual practical assessment, and that Schlo would be evaluated first since he has more experience than Jin. Jin understood the main point, greeted Chloe, and jokingly called her the elder. However, Chloe replied that she actually feels like the elder here. Jin noted that with the bronze class, Chloe would compete at most with a silver examiner, but then Fine unexpectedly delivered bad news. It turned out that their real opponent was a gold category adventurer. When Jin asked who she was, he was told more. She explained that they were skilled fencers who possessed some magic, preferring speed and skill over brute strength. His face immediately became worried when he asked if it was about Elsa, but she denied it, explaining that Elsa rarely shows her strong skills in front of people. Next, he asked if it would be possible to use magic during the trial. He was told that yes, magic is allowed, but weapons must only be those issued by the guild. Then she asked if they had any more questions, but they politely declined, thanked her for her time and attentive attitude. To this, Fine politely smiled and said that fulfilling a partner's request is her job. Soon they reached the battle arena, and Jin was surprised that the testing place was located just beneath the guild. Chloe was noticeably nervous, but Jin, on the contrary, looked excited. This made her ask if he was teasing her on purpose. At that moment, a figure appeared behind them and remarked that they were strangely calm. Before them stood their examiner of the Golden Guild, Ange, who politely and calmly greeted both. Jin and K.H. Loy got acquainted, and Rosliachina noticed that Jin was indeed as polite as they said about him. She added that other adventurers should take him as an example. She turned to Chloe and said that she would be the first to undergo the trial. When Chloe agreed, Edge suggested starting the preparation. She stood by K.H. Loy's side and allowed her to choose the weapon that suited her best, as this was part of the trial. Then she asked if the length and size of the sword suited K.H. Loy and if it was comfortable for her to hold it in her hands. Vic also showed that if everything was correct, she could determine it by the precise sound of the swing. Ace Clues successfully chose her weapon. Ong announced that the test had begun. Chloe felt the tension inside growing, and from nerves, her hands and feet even went numb. Jin encouraged her, telling her to, as always, not give up and do everything she could. Seeing this scene, Ainge couldn't hold back and said that Chloe had really made herself good friends, and now it was time to announce the start of the match. Chloe decisively rushed at Ange with a sword. Ange effortlessly parried the blow and calmly noted that such big and simple attacks are very easy to repel. Chloe swung the sword with all her might, but Ange easily stopped her strike, barely exerting any effort. Chloe instantly stepped back, and Ange immediately noted that she was moving faster than expected. At that moment, Ainge prepared for an attack and rushed straight at Chloe with her sword ready, but as soon as Chloe deflected the blow, Ainge said that Chloe was defending too softly. Without any warning, he hit her hard. Chloe barely managed to deflect the blow. Ange continued to attack and warned that Chloe could get seriously hurt, as she thought it was an ordinary wooden sword. Jin encouraged her from the side, and this gave Chloe the strength to continue the fight. She did not stop and kept moving forward constantly. She decided to maintain a fast pace because she was confident she could win. When she swung the sword again, Angel easily dodged. Right during their engagement, Angie calmly told her that she had very unusual eyes. Chloe rushed at her again and started attacking even faster. But Angel skillfully dodged every attack. Suddenly, without warning, she lunged at her with the sword. However, Chloe guessed her next move even before the attack began, carefully looking at her stance. She positioned herself in the right place, thinking everything was under control. But to her surprise, Aints turned out to be trickier. She quietly got behind her and playfully lightly slapped her on the head. At that moment, it became clear that the fight was over. Meanwhile, Jin carefully watched how Aints attacked and took positions. He noticed that Aints cleverly distracted Chloe with a feigned stance, making her wait for a side strike. It was just an unexpected trap at the end. Although Chloe was caught off guard, she did not take her eyes off Aang. Approaching him with tears in her eyes, Chloe said that she had lost. Jin calmly reassured her, saying not to worry because the exam tests skills, not who wins. He added that she would definitely pass this test. Considering her incredible speed and abilities, but Ants intervened here, advising him to think better about himself because he would have to fight her further. Jin decided that he would avenge Ants for Clow. Ainge told him not to hold back because he had already seen their duel. Jin was truly impressed by the Golden Adventurer, as he perfectly understood that Edge wasn't even fighting Claw at full strength. That is why he decided not to lose vigilance in front of her for a minute. Standing opposite, Jin thought that although he did not want to do this, he might have to use his trump card in the middle of the fight. Just in case, he asked again if it was really possible to give his all, and Ainge answered affirmatively without hesitation. As soon as the whistle for the start of the match sounded, Jin reacted instantly. In an instant, they rushed to attack Anya, and this shocked all the spectators and even the judges. Although Ange managed to repel these lightning attacks, he calmly advised not to rush, but Jin equally calmly noted that this applies to both. They both jumped back at the same time, and then Edge asked who he really was, since he clearly did not look like an ordinary copper rank adventurer. Jin replied that he was just a novice. She really found him interesting, and when she launched an attack, she said she wanted to see how far he was willing to go. Although Jin seemed tired, he skillfully dodged all her attacks. At the same time, he understood that the difference in experience between them was too great, and if he just kept fighting head-on, he would quickly lose. When Ainge was clearly leading, she jokingly asked if he hadn't promised to fight at full strength, but Jin did not lose composure. He smiled and replied that he just needed a little time to truly get in the zone. Moreover, he decided to finally show his trump card, a new ability he gained after defeating the goblin leader in the dungeon. Furthermore, if he really intended to use it against her, he decided to act with full power, hiding nothing. He took a deep breath and immediately activated his Bodhi enhancement ability. A powerful wave of energy struck everyone, even Aim herself, who only smiled confidently. He thanked Anna for waiting for him and assured that now he was truly giving his all. Ange laughed and said that he had so much confidence that he even seemed arrogant. Meanwhile, Jin suddenly changed his stance. He was eager to test how powerful his new skill had become. Jin waved his sword to feel the new power inside himself. And immediately he looked Angela in the eyes with some dark confidence. Both throw themselves at each other. When their swords clashed, the strikes echoed across the entire field. She immediately noticed that his speed and strength had greatly increased. She also realized, if not for this, she would have already been unlucky. She still laughed and remarked that their duel had already gone beyond a simple trial. In response, he asked if she was not going to make his life easier and if she had not hidden some trick up her sleeve, but she assured him that he should not worry about victory or defeat. But Jin only smiled and said that it was a funny joke. Angel immediately gathered herself and simultaneously activated several of her skills, enhanced magic, used light magic, and created an illusion. At that very moment, her image began to blur, and she simply disappeared, as if dissolved into the air, leaving everyone around in complete shock. Seeing this, Jin calmed down and understood that she would not just disappear anywhere. He decided not to trust only his eyes, but tried to sense the magic using his enhanced senses. He immediately activated the skill to find magic and determined the enemy's location. Behind him, the opponent was already ready to attack. When she revealed herself, preparing to strike, Jin outsmarted her and disappeared from her sight, only to reappear right behind her. This caught her by surprise. Jin immediately swung his sword, but only lightly touched her, smiling triumphantly because he already felt his victory. Ainch could not believe her eyes and shook her head, saying that he not only recognized her main move, but also succumbed to her. She added that he is truly an incredible guy. Chloe joyfully exclaimed and began celebrating his friend's victory. Moreover, Ainge said that although it was unfortunate, the exam was officially over. She congratulated both on their promotion, happily announcing that both Jin and Chloe now belonged to the bronze level. They hung up, then jokingly asked if she disagreed with the results, but she gladly said that it was the best test and she would not dispute any part of it. A little later, everyone was celebrating Chloe and Jin's promotion at the Fire Dragon's place. Ricardo said that at first he thought Jin was an ordinary guy, but he didn't get to say more because Jin advised not to ask questions and to start wrapping things up. Ricardo admitted that he was not used to celebrating like this, but sincerely congratulated Jin and Chloe on their promotion to the bronze rank. Everyone happily raised their glasses and congratulated each other on the victory. Cynthia, who was also at the celebration, said that at first glance she felt that Jin was an interesting guy. She also hinted that she had new goods, so she offered Jin to buy something for this occasion. Meanwhile, Jin's friends were clearly surprised to see such a beautiful elf among his acquaintances. At that moment, Ulza asked Jin again if she could really join their celebration. Jin agreed because she wanted to find out how their move went during the exam. Elsa jokingly and teasingly offered to teach him everything in her room, adding that she would make a special spell for him. He was boiling with anger. Fane appeared with a frying pan in hand and began chasing Elsa away from him. Asuka, in turn, asked how Jin felt about fighting a golden rank adventurer. Jin replied that he was glad to have the skill of the Bodian swordsman. Moreover, he admitted that this fight was more about combat experience than simple skills, and although he managed to handle Anges magic, he was not completely satisfied with his performance. To his surprise, Suka suddenly leaned towards him. He looked carefully into his eyes, as if asking if there were any more problems, but suddenly he felt a strong pressure that overwhelmed him completely. He realized that sooner or later he would have to defeat such strong opponents as she. To change the subject, Jin slyly mentioned that he wanted to introduce her to his elf friend Cynthia, who wishes to present her with some new interesting things. Taking advantage of the moment, Cynthia showed a new magic wand that stores magical energy. It can be used when powers run out to recharge. Asuka was very interested in this item. And while they were engrossed in conversation, Jin noticed a good moment and fled from the place. But Chloe objected to him, and they raised their glasses together, celebrating their long-awaited victory. At that moment she asked if she really fought well against Ange. In response, Jin assured her that she acted even better than she could imagine. Angel immediately appears at the scene and advises Claude to be more confident in himself. She added that the physical abilities of these people are much better than those of other races, and she is sure that Chloe also has a special talent. Chloe looked a little confused, so Angelina turned to her and explained that she meant her eyes. She gently approached her, lightly touched her head, and advised her to look at the world more attentively to make her life even more interesting. Jin silently praised Ainge's insight. He knew well that Chloe was famous for her incredible vision in the game. During the trial, her actions significantly exceeded expectations. Jen recalled that at first Chloe simply reacted to movements, but by the end of the fight she seemed to anticipate them before she could see them. It seemed as if she could see the future. At that moment, Jin said he was sure Chloe would become an incredible adventurer, and those words immediately encouraged her. At that very moment, Ricardo brought delicious dishes and advised them to simply enjoy the celebration, not to think about the exam. But Jin decided for himself that he would remain at the copper rank for now, because becoming famous too quickly could spoil the course of events. Others also approached to congratulate him and praise the incredible abilities he had shown that day. Jin thanked them, saying that now he would gladly sit down, rest, and eat. Then she asked if he was free later, and he calmly replied that for adventures it was important not only to act, but also to eat well and rest. Suddenly Asuka appeared and offered to substitute for Fine. She said there was a special request specifically for the two of them, and added that the choice was theirs. Jin immediately felt something was wrong and refused without hesitation, but Asuka ignored his answer and asked again if they would agree to the proposal. Only then did Jin realize that they really had no other choice. Then she explained that they just needed to tell their adventures to an important person, and added that they could not refuse because of the relationships between the guilds. Hearing this, Jin pondered, if even the guild master could not refuse, then a very influential person was involved. He also thought that if it was some not very high-ranking nobleman, it would be no big deal. But if it was someone from the royal family, the situation could change drastically. With hope in his voice, Jin asked, "Are they really not of royal blood?" But the confidence on Asuka's face instantly shattered all of Jin's hopes. She explained that their client was Alice von Dirtle herself, the princess of this country. As soon as Jin heard this, he understood they definitely could not refuse, otherwise there would be big problems. He asked why the princess wanted to see them specifically, if she had never met them before. In response, Asuka explained that it seemed Her Highness simply wanted to learn more about the outside world from young travelers who were the same age as she was. Asuka also admitted that she did not understand why Jin was chosen for this task, and asked if he had attracted attention recently. He replied that he indeed had, recalling how he twice gave a thrashing to a hooligan on the street. Asuka apologized to him in advance and asked to somehow deal with this situation. She was worried that the guild would disappear by morning if she dared to refuse. Jin immediately noticed that something was wrong here and said that from the beginning everything looked suspicious. He emphasized that the guildmaster would never come to a regular trial for the copper level. Meanwhile, Asuka laughed at his words and said that she really liked that he was promoted so quickly. It truly pleased her. At that moment, he addressed Clay and noted that this request looked very suspicious, also asking if she was really ready to participate in it. At first, Clay was a bit skeptical because of such an unusual and dubious proposal. She quickly stopped hesitating when Asuka assured her that the task was very simple, without any danger or suspicion. Then everyone raised their glasses again, celebrating their first special order. The next morning, Jin and Chloe arrived at the huge castle of the princess. Both were very surprised to see such a large building. She asked if they were really going inside to talk with the princess herself. Meanwhile, he thought that any rest in the game could help them correct their path, as he was determined to complete this task at any cost. The estate guards escorted Jin and Klaus to Princess Fire's chambers. Klaus's hands trembled with excitement. She was about to meet the very princess of the capital. Jin himself admitted that he was also on edge, which prompted her to say that she just wanted to hear that everything would be all right. But Jin was worried not because of the proximity. There were several other important heroes in the game besides the main character and the girls. Princess Ferris was one of the main figures among them and played an important role as a saint. Jin decided to be cautious and not interfere with the already established course of events, but soon they still appeared. They enter the private room and meet the princess. Fire greeted them warmly, introducing herself as the princess of the kingdom of Grunt. Then she politely invited them to come closer. In her room, they were allowed to communicate informally. On the other hand, it was noticeable that Bodhi was tense and very nervous. It was visible in all her movements. At that moment, Fire suggested immediately moving on to the main topic. Hearing this, Jin asked again if they really just needed to tell about their adventures. Then he asked if that was really the only reason she called them. With a confident expression, Furs clarified whether he was implying that she called them under a false pretext. However, she no longer hid the truth and directly said that she called for another reason. She recalled his actions, how Jin once saved a girl from a bully and taught him a lesson, and also calmly paid for everything for 10 days in a row in a difficult situation. He managed on his own against a whole horde of monsters and even saved Chloe from betrayal. She especially emphasized that he was once a nobleman, and his skills in swordsmanship and magic are truly impressive. Despite the fact that he seemed to have no special training, Jin began to get nervous and broke out in a cold sweat when he heard all his adventures from the princess, and immediately asked if that was all she knew about him. They admit that, although Chloe was also quite an interesting personality, there are even more fascinating stories about Jin alone. The question arises, does he hide even more secrets behind his calm face? At that very moment, he clearly remembered the story of Fair. She was an unusual princess who was bored with a long life within the castle walls, and instead of usual entertainments, she sought out and cared for people with difficult fates and complicated pasts. Jin could not gather his thoughts at that moment, wondering how he could have forgotten something so important. Seeing his obvious reaction, she jokingly and slightly mockingly asked if it was too hot for him in the room. Although Jin felt awkward, he still noted that the royal family definitely has access to such detailed information, but Fair admitted that learning about his noble origin was actually not difficult. Learning about his adventures was very difficult. Moreover, information about him appeared very slowly, even through the guild. She also paid special attention to one detail that truly impressed her: his abilities. She asked how he managed to acquire such impressive power and abilities, considering that the Largenius family rejected him, and he spent 12 years in solitude. She even said that his skills were better than the abilities of her own guards. This is exactly what helped Jin understand why those guards had been so wary before. Maintaining a calm appearance, Jin told her that she had greatly overestimated him. Meanwhile, Furs admitted that although she has many questions and remarks, she will not insist further now. And suddenly an awkward silence fell in the room, and then suddenly. Finally, the appearance of Fire changed the situation. Usually when she starts talking, adventurers get so nervous that they immediately tell everything. Jin immediately glanced at Clough, who was still standing in place from excitement, and asked if Theros meant her specifically. Then he admitted that he was also worried. But the unbelieving Sea escaped the fire as if waking from a dream when she said they would meet again. Confused, Jin asked her to repeat it, but quickly covered his mouth with his hand, not believing he had spoken it aloud. Seeing his reaction, she asked why he looked dissatisfied, but he hurried to assure her that was not the case. Then she said that she had specifically indicated this in the application. She said she would like to hear more of his stories, and when Jin hesitated a little, the fear in her eyes sparkled with delight. She explained that she would never let him go because such a talent that can entertain her is very rare. She assured him that she would cherish every moment spent together, but he thought to himself that he had once again brought a dangerous person into his life. Jin wondered why he constantly encountered problematic people, especially when he tried so hard to stay away from the main plotline. He sighed wearily, but Fires only laughed at his miserable appearance, indifferently stating that his torment only pleased her. At that moment, he mentally begged her to stop this cold behavior. He glanced sideways at Chloe, and realizing that she was of little use in this situation, asked if they could already talk about their adventure. Vaughan gladly agreed and suggested discussing it over dinner. On the other hand, Jin understood that this completely matched Furz's character. She had always dreamed of breaking out into the outside world. But when the hero appeared and the fight with the Demon King became fiercer, she had to join the hero as a saint. Soon as they headed to the dining hall, Jin noticed with relief that Claus looked calm again. However, she quickly tensed when Vaughan said that she would live long enough to tell her stories, and Jin silently encouraged Chloe to hold on until the end of the matter. Suddenly, they unexpectedly came across a powerful figure, and Jin's face twisted with fear. He realized it was Rifandres himself, the father of Fea and the king of the royal capital. A little later, everyone gathered at the dining table. Smiles appeared on all their faces when they saw the dishes served. Jin said it was a great honor for him to be with everyone. Meanwhile, Rufander encouraged them to eat heartily, as true travelers always eat well. Chloe thanked him for this and addressed him as Sir. Hearing this, Jin turned pale. It seemed Chloe did not know who this man really was, but before he could tell her the truth, Rufander intervened and asked how their conversation went. Fires replied that everything was wonderful. Then they addressed him as father, which completely shocked Chloe. They all sat at the dining table. The locked body trembled with anxiety, asking how they ended up in such a situation. Jin replied that the fire was to blame for everything. Meanwhile, Firas calmly said that unexpected twists are an integral part of the adventure. Rufandres thanked both for sharing interesting stories with his daughter, which caused Chloe to laugh nervously and a bit awkwardly. But Jin calmly explained that it was only his duty and respectfully thanked the king for the high praise. But Rufander only smiled and said that there was no need to be so formal, as these words were spoken not as a king, but as a father. Taking a risk, Jin asked if he could really speak like that to a common person. He paused for a moment, then asked if Jin really meant that, adding that he was watching everything closely. Hearing this, Jin became very nervous because of the strange behavior of his father and daughter, but he tried not to show his anxiety and said that he usually forgets unpleasant memories. At that very moment, Tyrist offered to help him remember, saying she had heard rumors that he had broken off the engagement and was expelled from the family. She asked what had really happened. But Jin kept his guesses to himself and did not want to explain anything. She shook her head, not believing her eyes. Rufander laughed and added that now he understood why Furs was so bothered with him and advised Jin to hide less, because in his opinion, he was keeping too many secrets. A dark, gloomy energy emanated from him, and he said it was no wonder everyone suspected him of hostility towards the royal family. Jin was surprised that even unofficially the king paid so much attention to one adventurer. He emotionally remarked that if it were true, Princess Fire would not be here now. Immediately the guards angrily surround him, holding swords right by his neck. Rufander strictly hinted that one more careless word could cost Jin his life. He firmly advised not to consider him immature and warned that he would not remain calm if Jin mentioned his daughter again. His face frowned when he ordered Jin to tell everything that happened a month ago. Seeing the true nature of the king, Jin calmly asked if it was His Majesty's order, and Rufandra's replied that yes, it was indeed an order. This time Furs clearly outplayed Jin, and he already suspected that their chance meeting with His Majesty on the way to lunch was not accidental at all. Even having lunch together with the guards in the castle showed that they were not completely trusted. Or maybe it was just another performance to satisfy the curiosity of the fire. But Jin thought it was better to just tell the truth to leave the palace faster. Therefore, he began to talk about his past. He said that when he turned 12 years old, he was unfairly accused of stealing the family treasure, and this news greatly surprised Rufandras. Jin talks about everything that happened to him in recent months, recalling how his life became incredibly difficult after his mother's death. He had no choice but to leave that palace. Hearing this sad story, Chloe's eyes filled with tears, and she gently comforted Jin, saying it was not his fault. Jin also tried to cheer her up, explaining that it was all in the past, and thanks to leaving home, he met good people like Chloe. After she learned everything that happened to Jin, Rufandras got up from the table, apologized for interrupting lunch, and said he needed to finish his business. Before setting off, they said their goodbyes. Jin felt immense relief that they had gotten through it. After that, he addressed Ferris, who was ashamed to look him in the eyes, and advised her not to chase after entertainment thoughtlessly, since her actions almost led to the death of the Jin when her father tried to protect her. He immediately understood her and asked if the chance meeting with the king was really her plan. She admitted that it was and explained she had to turn to her father for help because Jin was hiding everything. Feeling guilty, she apologized for going so far to learn more about him. He did not say much, but clearly advised her not to do that anymore. However, she only vaguely replied that she would think about his words. She also said that she never knows when he will hide something from her again. Jin himself suspected that such a question would come up. He asked if she really needed to know everything, considering that they hardly knew each other. In response, Ferris admitted that she wanted them to visit the estate together from time to time, which greatly surprised Chloe. The clown asked if they had even discussed anything like that, because she did not remember such a thing, and Jin said she looked completely confused. Moreover, he told Ferris that they could simply refuse her proposal, but she calmly replied that then she would just come to visit them herself. But of course, she could not go alone, so her soldiers and her overly caring father were supposed to go with her. Gino was overwhelmed with tension, and he grabbed his head in irritation, thinking about why he constantly attracts problematic people, although he had planned to go to a completely different place, unrelated to this story, as soon as he gathered the necessary amount. On the other hand, Fea quietly laughed at his failure and said that, honestly, she enjoyed watching him fail at something. He had no choice, so he agreed, asking her not to come when they were busy with matters. Fea explained that if she called him every day, no one would write news about it, so it was better to contact him when he achieved something important or when she had free time. Hearing this, Chloe couldn't hold back and, a little confused, asked because she knew she would be called too. A few minutes later, when Jen and Chloe were already leaving the estate, Jen explained that the main attention that day was on his story, but it seemed the lights were also interested in Chloe. He added that next time she would have to go through the attention and scrutiny herself. But still, Chloe said that she was an ordinary girl. Returning to the guild and seeing how tired everyone was, Fane anxiously asked if they were all right. Jin tiredly explained that he had just talked a little with the princess, and Cynthia immediately gave him her magical candy, which restores strength, to cheer him up. Fane noted that the royal family was indeed very talented, although some of them had very rich imaginations. Jin added that he did not expect to see the king so unexpectedly at all. The decision stated that Rufandras loved his children very much and was simply very worried about his daughter. Chloe couldn't hold back and added that his own life was very complicated and exhausting. Also, Chin said that he had already worn clothes with fire before, and asked to lay out such things a little more evenly next time. She smiled and assured him that she would do everything properly. At that moment, Jin said that he was very tired after the journey. I wonder how useful meditation could be. Intrigue became interested in this meditation, asked a few questions, and Jin explained that it was a technique for healing. But Fine had never heard this word before. Jin was not surprised. He knew that this term appeared only in cheap character descriptions, not in the actual game storyline. Meditation simply accelerated natural recovery, allowing healing even where it was usually impossible. Unfortunately, Jin did not know at all how one could acquire such a skill in their world, and then suddenly Cynthia said that it would be very convenient to be able to meditate. This immediately made him jump up from his seat and ask where she knew about such his ability. Suddenly an idea struck her, and she told Jin that she even knew how to get it. She also added that it was a bit expensive, but Jin asked why Cynthia had come to the guild at all. To this, Cynthia replied that she had only come to deliver goods and earn money, nothing more. She said mockingly that she had actually found a matter even more important. Jen hesitantly pulled one coin out of his pocket and asked how much he needed to pay. But instead, she quickly snatched his entire wallet and declared that it was a big discount for him. And then Jin realized that this was actually a cheating skill and he should thank her for the help. Later that night, he finally reached his room and collapsed onto the bed, completely exhausted. He thought that meditation was a special talent possessed only by heroes. He turned on his status panel and noticed that in a month he had risen 2 levels at once, all thanks to his ability to accelerate development and hidden settings that few knew about. Moreover, he thought that Cynthia was kind enough to share such a useful skill with him, so he decided to quickly learn it before he was exposed. Getting it was not difficult at all. He only needed to gently combine his magic with nature, calm his thoughts, and sharpen his senses. He felt the essence of everything around with his skin, as if he opened his feelings and carefully stretched them throughout the entire tavern. He immediately noticed a stranger lurking right near his room. He immediately asked who this unfamiliar person was and prepared to act. He warned that he would defend himself and would no longer warn if they did not leave, and suddenly the gates quietly opened. Before Jin appeared an important elder man who introduced himself as Zeph. Jin mentally noted that this man was truly impressive. And Zeph hoped that from this moment, they would start getting to know each other better. Jin addressed him by name, Zeph von Rillies, and directly asked why the representative of the royal service came specifically to him. Zeph was very surprised that Jin knew who he was. But Jin did not waste time and immediately asked if Furs was interested in him and if he was the one who sent Zeph after him. But he added that it could not be just because of the princess's curiosity. Probably, it was some secret assignment from the king himself. Zeph stood out among all who served the royal family. Rufandres was helped by a capable minister from Burdis. In fact, the one who secretly supported the king was Zeph van Rillis, cold-blooded, collected, and always calm. He handled all secret matters himself. With a stern look, Jin asked if he came to kill him. However, Zeph pondered for a few minutes. He thought for a moment, then advised Jin to learn a couple of tricks. Jin sarcastically thanked him for such advice. But Zeph apologized once again, saying that perhaps he had been too intrusive. After that, he explained that he came only to ask a few questions. I explained that after the return, Jen and Chloe Rufandres asked me to find out more about the Largenius family. Jin was very surprised when he learned that the investigation was not about him, but about his entire family. He immediately asked what exactly Rufander wanted from the Largenius family. To this, Zephyr replied that everything would depend on the answers Jin would give. Moreover, he said that Rufandres is even considering the possibility of completely dismantling them. This news simply stunned Jin, because it was very different from the original game plot. In the game, the Largenia family either just received a warning for bad treatment of Jin, or were not punished or disbanded at all. But Jin decided to take advantage of this unexpected opportunity, because if he deviated from the main plot, he would have fewer chances to end up on the dark side. Jin agreed to help because Zeph insisted strongly, and at the same time, Zeph asked him to tell everything he knows about the Largenia family. Jin calmly sat down and began to tell that his biological mother was poisoned by Largenia. This made Zeph very wary, but only the reincarnated Jin knew that the Largenia family used poison. Even the main character in the game did not know this, so Jen was confident that revealing this important truth would significantly change the situation. There was also a risk that the Largenia family might disappear entirely before the main story even began. At that moment, Zeph asked if Jin was sure about the truthfulness of his story, because a mistake would not help at all. But Jin replied that he knew for sure that everything was true. Taking a suspicious bottle from his inventory, he said that it was connected to the poison given to his mother. He added that although her body was no longer there, this substance might contain important clues. Zeph was very surprised that Jin had such important evidence and asked if he could keep it. Jin replied that he showed it exactly for that purpose. Zeph added this evidence to his list, promising that he would definitely return another time to talk about it. Jin was sure that this would definitely change the course of the game, and Zeph suggested simply continuing the conversation. Shortly after that, Jin told him everything he knew about the Larginia family. Zeph began to act on his advice and thanked him for the valuable help. But before leaving completely, Zeph paused for a moment. Before asking why Jin had given him such important evidence at all, he thought it over. This question caught Jin by surprise, and he began to make up excuses. Jin just wanted to survive, even if it meant changing the original story, but he could not say this aloud in front of him. So, without much thought, he firmly stated that he only wanted to avenge his mother. Hearing this, Zeph confidently placed his hand on his shoulder, and with a confident look, assured him that he would definitely find the culprit. Jin thanked him, realizing that such a person was a real find and a strong ally. Jin's biological mother was poisoned even before he remembered his past life, so he did not actually feel deep sorrow then. However, his anger at Larginia, who continued to live without worrying about anything, was much stronger. Jin thought if his mother had stayed alive, perhaps Game Jin would not have taken the dark path. With his feelings, it was clear why the Larginia family was now on the brink of destruction. At that moment, Zeph also informed him that a separate request might come through the guild, which was unrelated to this case, but Jin still had a bad feeling. Zeph asked him to think everything over once more and emphasized that he was asking personally. He added that if Fire had already decided to do something, then no one and nothing would stop her. Moreover, he said that even Rufandras was very worried about his daughter and that he was the one who had to discreetly settle all matters with the adventures. At this, Zeph shook his hand and left. The next morning, when Jen and Chloe approached the registration desk, Fine immediately bowed deeply to them and sincerely apologized. Then she said that Ashoka had agreed to fulfill the royal request while Fine was absent. Chloe began to panic, feverishly asking what they should do, but Jen calmly suggested first listening to what exactly the request was. When the request to escort came, Jin immediately asked if there was any chance of making a mistake regarding the princess's safety. Fine replied that there would be no problems if they stayed inside the castle, but if they went to the dungeon, the soldiers would not be able to accompany her. The guard had to be near the fire precisely because of his age. In addition, Fine learned that the escort would take place directly on the academy grounds. Hearing this, Jen's face instantly turned pale. He wondered why he was constantly being pulled back into the game world, even though he was trying so hard to break free from this story. Noticing his worried face, Fine asked if he was all right, and Jin replied that he was just a little dizzy. Moreover, the academy meant a place for learning, but Jin admitted that he did not do very well with school. It was the same with clothing. It also caused certain difficulties. She was in complete shock and kept asking what she should do now. Later that night, when Jin was returning to the hotel, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The more he tried to distance himself from the planned story, the stronger it seemed to pull him back. He pondered if it continues like this, he might eventually go down a bad path. He also became curious about what would happen if he simply left this city. Suddenly he heard noise in the neighboring alley and quickly rushed there. But suddenly he comes across a suspicious man in a hood who is forcibly dragging a girl behind him. Without wasting a second, Jin swiftly rushed at the man and swung his sword to strike. But will he be able to quickly and easily repel the attack? Jin asked what the man intended to do with the girl, but he in response asked why Jin intervened so suddenly. They both jumped back simultaneously, and the man noticed that although Jin looks like an adventurer, he is very mistaken about the real situation. Jin replied that he is actually a kidnapper who hunts girls. At the same time, he believed that the man was actually much stronger than he seemed at first, and that man, in turn, called him rude for accusing him of kidnapping. But Jin did not listen to him at all and rushed forward, deciding at least to buy time so the girl could escape. But the man easily dodged each of his strikes, moving very gracefully, yet Jin was not going to retreat. He activated his magical spell that enhances the wind, and immediately attacks the man, but he easily avoids the attack thanks to his agile movements. And he called the magical ability of Jin impressive. Jin himself was shocked because his perfectly timed spell was deflected so easily that he couldn't even say anything. Suddenly, guards appeared on the spot and ordered everyone not to move. Breathing a sigh of relief, Jin immediately asked them to detain the kidnapper. But to his great surprise, the guards headed straight for the girl. Jin was left speechless because of such a strange situation. But he was simply amazed when the guards thanked the man and explained that the girl was actually a notorious thief who had long been bothering them. When the guards left, Jin quickly approached the man, bowed deeply, and apologized for misjudging him. But the mysterious man patted him on the shoulder and assured him there was nothing to worry about, everything was already settled. Moreover, he said he enjoyed their brief skirmish and added that he believed they would meet again. He also offered Jin to show his true strength when the time comes. When the man left, Jin pondered. Even if he were in his best form, he still probably could not defeat this stranger. Now he was even more curious about who he really was. The next morning at the Ferris Academy, Ferris warmly welcomed Jin and Chloe. Confidently, Jin said they were here at the royal request. Unexpectedly, another person emerged from behind the fairies and smilingly asked if these two were her guards. Seeing Jin, he immediately recognized him. When asked about it, he simply said it was a coincidence. Seeing this man, Jin immediately recognized him as the legendary swordsman, the Holy Sword Julius, who according to the game's plot was supposed to become the hero's mentor. Ferris also informed them that Julius would be the sparring partner for the candidates for bodyguards. This simply stunned Chloe. Jin now knew for sure, the more he tried to stray from the plot, the stronger it pulled him back. Otherwise, he wouldn't have met such an important person so early. After this, Julius calmly admitted that last night they had competed in a light, informal fight, which greatly surprised both Virus and Chloe. And Jin could not believe that the man in the hood he fought with last night turned out to be Julius himself. Furs asked about Jin's experience, and Julius replied that Jin was simply incredibly talented. Then Furs became interested in where she found such a capable adventurer. Hearing this, she noted that she rarely hears such praise from him. Then she said that Chloe will also be fine. It also became known that Chloe is actually the daughter of the hero who saved the kingdom of beasts. This discovery greatly surprised Jin. Julius was fully ready for the duel. He really wanted to fight Jin and test his strength to the fullest, since last night Jin did not show all his capabilities. Meanwhile, Chloe, trembling with fear, begged him not to be too harsh with her. But Yulia directly said that at first she would be cautious with Jin. Also, Julius jokingly asked Jin to be a little more lenient with him, especially considering that Jin did not give his all in yesterday's fight. But before they could continue further, Yulia calmly stopped when the flame caught his cloak. Then she turned to Jin and said she wanted to introduce him to someone else. She said it was none other than the daughter of Duke Rufios and asked if Jin really understood what she was hinting at. Moreover, she said that it seemed Zeph, while investigating the Largenius family case, accidentally ran into a misunderstanding with the Rudios clan and even got a bit too carried away with it. Jin thought to himself that Zeph generally tends to meddle in other people's affairs. Jane knew that only one young girl from the Duke Rufios family was connected to him. Although he really did not want to agree, he understood. With the influential Rufio family, one must be careful, so open argument was not allowed. Moreover, he still could not understand why he constantly meets all these important characters from the game, and on top of everything. Right now, he was meeting exactly with the character he cared about the most. If such a person appeared right in front of him, it was no wonder he was on cloud nine with joy. That woman was none other than his former fiancée, Flora von Rufios. As soon as he saw her, he immediately blushed and could not hide it. Flora's father was also in the room, whom Jin automatically greeted and called his father-in-law. The Duke immediately got indignant and said that Jin was talking nonsense because he had no right to call him that after breaking off the engagement without any explanation. Jin apologized, but the Duke immediately waved it off, saying he already knew almost everything. But he said he would not be able to calm down until he hears the whole truth personally from Jin. He also admitted that he feels very sorry and his heart aches for Flora. At that moment, Jin broke the tense silence between him and Flora, noting that they were meeting face to face like this for the first time, which seemed strange to Flora since they were engaged. With despair on her face, she asked him to tell what really happened in the Largenius family because she wanted to know the whole truth herself. Although Jin warned that the story would be long, Flora was ready to listen to everything until the end. After some time, Jin opened up to both of them. He shares his story about how his family turned away from him because of his decision to become an adventurer. Flora's father grabbed his head and said he would never have thought that such a thing could happen in such a respectable family. He couldn't believe that he had never noticed anything about the Larginia family before. However, Jin claimed that it was entirely his fault because he never explained properly and that he was actually fine. Flora's father admitted that he had his own mistakes. He confessed that he trusted the groom's family too much and didn't even try to get to know Jin personally. He said that if he had met Jin even once, he would have immediately noticed something strange about the Larginia family. After that, he apologized to Jin, but Jin was embarrassed and said there was no need to apologize. Flora, with a sad face, apologized, admitting that she hadn't noticed anything. She also apologized for not being able to support him. She regretted not being able to be with her fiancé when he needed her the most. Jin awkwardly and hastily asked her not to apologize, adding that their engagement with such a complicated person only created additional problems. Moreover, he confessed with a smile that he even liked living as an ordinary person and traveling to various interesting places. But at these words, her father looked at him very sternly and asked if he was not glad that he broke off the engagement with Flora. Jin panicked and hurried to explain that he did not mean that at all. Crying, she asked if Jin really thought so little of her. But he tried to explain that he meant something completely different. Now he was an ordinary person, not a nobleman like her. She leaned slightly towards him and asked if the only obstacle between them was the difference in status. Jin hesitated but still confirmed it. Her father smiled a sly smile, understanding that the joke had cornered Jin, and now he was completely confused in this chaos. Then Jin calmly suggested forgetting the past and focusing on the future. This phrase caused Flora to smile sincerely, and she laughed cheerfully. With hope in her voice, Flora asked if they could meet again. Meanwhile, Jin thought that although getting close to important characters could be dangerous, he could not let his beloved heroine worry even more. So he agreed immediately, without hesitation. At the other end of the academy grounds, Julius and Clow were training fiercely, while at that time Jin came and met with the firefighters. She told him that it seemed their quarrel was coming to an end, and asked how his conversation went. Jin smiled triumphantly and said there was nothing to worry about, and Pharaohs sincerely rejoiced that everything ended well. On the other hand, Julius managed to skillfully avoid Clow's last attack and corner her. Pharaohs finished the match and received well-deserved applause for her incredible moves. But lowering her head and not believing in herself, Chloe muttered that she couldn't even land a single hit on him. Yet Jin quickly cheered her up. He said that the very fact that she managed to challenge the Holy Sword was incredible. Julius also intervened in the conversation, agreeing that Jin was absolutely right, and added that he could calmly entrust her with the protection of the princess. After that, he declared that now Jin had to fight him, and reminded that they had already sparred together before. Jin responded with the same confident smile and instantly prepared for battle. When the clash began, Julius immediately rushed at Jin and swung his sword with force, but Jin managed to block this fierce attack. Julius called him stubborn and admitted that from the very beginning he wanted to destroy him, but Jin sarcastically remarked in response that it was very unfortunate. Jin instantly jumped back, but Julius covered his sword with magic. He swung the sword, and a strong gust of wind hit Jin with great force. Jin was very surprised when he saw such magic. But Julius did not give him a break, continuing to attack without stopping. He said that this was just a continuation of yesterday's clash, and suggested not to hold back and give it his all. Although Jin did not like to yield, he quickly activated his fire magic and created a large fireball, which he threw towards Julius. But Julius deftly dodged and praised Jin for his complex techniques. In response, Jin said that he was better at magic than with a sword. When their swords clashed, a ringing sound echoed throughout the academy grounds. Jin asked if he looked like a guard. Answering, Yuli quietly smiled and confirmed that Jin really is perfect for this.